and ready to go. OutKick 360 is underway. 6th and Peabody, our location, and it is the Thursday edition. That means Trey Wallace will join us. Dave McGinnis is coming up a bit later in today's show. We'll get some great stories from Coach Mack, former NFL head coach, been in the league for over 35 years. Knew Franco Harris, not just from the NFL days, but college, where they met on the gridiron. Mack was a safety at TCU, and he felt the wrath of Franco Harris at Penn State. Great stories coming up there and much more. Plenty of headlines. Chad, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Hutton. Excited for this show. Excited for Coach Mack joining us to tell this Franco Harris story and all of our other great guests today. And there's plenty of news to get to.
Yeah, I mean, we've got Thursday Night Football tonight. We'll be previewing that throughout the show, and plenty of NFL games you'll be able to see. NFL Sunday Ticket to YouTube. 7 years, $2 billion. And, Chad, I was thinking about what you said yesterday about, is this going to be difficult? Is it going to be easier because more people have cut the cord? I think because it's YouTube, it will be far easier than what we've seen through Thursday night in the package there with Amazon.
I think so. I think that part of it could help. It's just anytime there's anything new, you know, it's almost like a PSA that you have to put out in the months leading up to whatever the change is. When it's something as popular as the Sunday Ticket with the NFL and any sort of package like that. So we're getting more and more accustomed to new things, to, you know, how to navigate a streaming service. And this is all old hat for most people now with a television. So I think the more changes like this happen, the easier it gets to morph into that new medium, whatever it may be. So it'll probably end up being the same for YouTube and NFL Sunday Ticket.
So DirecTV had been paying about $1.5 billion a year, and they've said they were losing about $500 million annually on that deal. They didn't want back in with the option. Here is where the YouTube, and this is Google, is jumping in. They're paying $2 billion annually moving forward, and they're hoping that what they've done is create not just the package for those that are on YouTube TV. You know, you can add that on or whatever, but also you have the casual. I mean, going straight to YouTube for everything you want. As far, I always refer to it as the wormhole. They're going to hit everybody over the top with any ad that you see on there about NFL Sunday Ticket, and they're saying, we're going to take it much further than DirecTV did. I heard more complaints about the DirecTV thing than I heard compliments because fans wanted more options, and because DirecTV was paying $1.5 billion annually, that's where it was. That's where it lived.
It's crazy to me, the business of the NFL, not the business itself. But when it comes to media rights holders, they are fine losing a lot of money. None of these networks make money off the NFL. Now, the idea is they make money off everything around it and bringing people to their network and all the subsidiaries and everything they can do with that. But on the actual, we're going to pay you ungodly amounts of money to carry your games, and then what we're going to sell in advertising, they're all losing money. If you come close in a Super Bowl year, let's say, that you have it on your network to breaking even, that's a huge win. So when I hear that DirecTV was losing $500 million with that deal, does not surprise me one bit. And if you feel like you're not getting the added bonus, whatever that is, around your service, then I understand dumping it also.
Well, you had to subscribe.
Yeah.
YouTube's not going to make you do that.
Right.
They're going to have a standalone package
but my point is just
not have YouTube TV.
Just expense and profit and revenue. It doesn't make sense. But what these networks would tell you, what makes sense is we will lose money in that transaction in order to have a piece of the NFL pie that can pump up everything else we do as a network.
They're not losing money based on the NFL package. They're losing money because people are cutting the cord. So you had to subscribe to DirecTV in order to get that feature, which was $80 annually, $79.99, tacked on to whatever you paid for satellite or cable television. And YouTube TV is not going to make you do that. I don't know what the flat rate is going to be for YouTube. But if you want to just subscribe to that premium channel only, you don't have to have YouTube TV. You just go through your account, pay your $80 or whatever it is, and you've got it. So I think it's going to be far more profitable for them.
Yeah, and look, For DirecTV, yes. You're saying for YouTube and
For YouTube.
NFL? Yeah, for YouTube, it's going to be better, but I still don't think they're going to get all that money back. I don't think it's going to go. They're not going to be in the black on the end of this. None of these networks are. My point is,
there's far more
paying
than
the
13.5 million people, though, that'll go to YouTube.
The only people that make a huge profit on this transaction are the NFL and their teams. That's it.
Well, I think I'm very interested. Google and Apple were the two that were in on it. And the big networks, the big cable providers were not.
And what I'm saying is, though, I'm just looking at it from, we're paying this much to get the NFL. Here's what we're getting in revenue dollars, in subscriptions, everything just from the NFL. It almost never comes out to even. The NFL, you're going to lose money off of it, but the thought process is, like anything in business, I can lose money here, but in doing so, it's helping me make money over here. So CBS, Fox, everyone who has the NFL, they're spending so much on carrying the NFL, not just the NFL, but broadcast teams, travel, everything else. They're losing money. But if you're Fox or you're CBS, what you're saying is, I'm losing money there, but I'm actually making more money on Hulu or whatever other companies we own, or Peacock if you're NBC, because it helps bring people over to this streamer, or it helps people come over to 60 Minutes after the games on CBS. It's going to help with every other bit of advertising around the entire network.
Sad news with the passing of Ronnie Hillman, who was a running back for the Denver Broncos. He was their leading rusher the year they beat the Panthers in the Super Bowl. Passed away of cancer, which he'd been battling for some time. And that news was sad to see. He also played with the Chargers, the Vikings, but known for that big year that he had with the Broncos when they downed the Panthers. Travis Hunter to Colorado, and Chad, Dion primetime comes through. Yesterday, all the names that he was linked to immediately we saw pop up.
It's just funny to me that this was ever a question. I did laugh when I saw Travis Hunter will also consider Georgia and Florida State and some other ones that were on his list. And I'm thinking, he's following Deion Sanders. Deion Sanders called his shot. I also laughed at the people were saying, breaking, Shedeur Sanders transferring to Colorado.
I saw that too.
I'm like, this hasn't happened yet?
Can you imagine if he didn't?
I mean, that would not be a good start for Coach Prime in Boulder. But, I mean, it's a foregone conclusion. I mean, he was already saying these guys were going to follow him. I'm still amazed. I know it's probably changed now. I'm going to go and look at the updated rankings, but just how far behind Colorado was in recruiting, that even with splashes like this in what they're doing.
When's the last time they were discussed on signing day?
They're still third. Now they've moved up. They were in the 60s. Now they're 47th. And I want to see where that ranks in the Pac-12. But it was like third or fourth from the bottom of the Pac-12 as of yesterday in recruiting. Even with all the hype, the Lamborghinis, the Louis Vuitton bags, all the photos being taken with Coach Prime, they were still towards the bottom of the Pac-12. I'm just going to go straight through, and I'll find where they rank in the conference, but they're 47th nationally as of this moment.
Gardner Minshew starting for the Philadelphia Eagles on Christmas Eve, 4:25 Eastern kickoff on Fox, Cowboys and Eagles. Minshew mania time. Jalen Hurts with the sprained shoulder. Dr. David Chao will be on with us. We'll discuss that injury and more a bit later in today's show. But the Eagles are making the right call here. If it's a short-term issue, don't risk it and don't let it become more significant. And as far as seeding is concerned, sure, they need one more game, one more win to lock up the NFC East. But this is more important. And I still think the Eagles can win this game with Gardner Minshew. They absolutely run the football well. They have two receivers that can pick up the slack for Minshew. Minshew is certainly capable in small doses of coming in and providing some energy and a level of competitive quarterback play that can win you a ball game. And, oh, by the way, their defense is legit. They can really get after the quarterback. So the Eagles are – it's not like they're at a disadvantage because Hurts isn't playing. But it's not like they're significantly worse at other spots because a backup is in. I think the players around Minshew will elevate him. And I think the game plan should also feature heavy run against the Dallas defense.
Colorado, by the way, 5th in the Pac-12. Just went through it in the conference.
So they were
in recruiting.
3rd or 4th to last.
They were 9th, somewhere around there, 8th or 9th. What's best for the Eagles is to win this game, obviously, and clinch everything they need to clinch by winning this game. What's best for Jalen Hurts' MVP candidacy is for Gardner Minshew to be terrible and the Eagles' offense to not look good and for them to lose and for him to come back quickly and show that he's a big part. He is a big part of the offense, but that he is the engine that drives it, and he's not just some supplemental guy that you can plug and play a different quarterback and have equal production. I don't think that he's that. I think he's the MVP right now, but there are going to be arguments. I talked about this with Armando Salguero when you were out earlier this week, Hutton. He is very interested in watching this because he is of the belief that this is not Jalen Hurts' offense. This is the system. This is the players around him, and that Gardner Minshew may show that in this game if he puts up big numbers and looks great. I disagree, but it is one game. You can't take too much away from it, but it's going to go a long way in showing us about that system, about the supporting characters, and about Jalen Hurts' meaning to this offense, which I think it's huge.
And this could be it's going to be a good game. It could end up being a fantastic game based on what both of these offenses are capable of. I know Minshew's in. The Cowboys have averaged 37 points per game over the last 7 games. So they're hitting a stride offensively. They're coming off this loss to Jacksonville, 40-34. But this is a very important game for playoff positioning for Dallas as well. And right now, they're headed on the road to Tampa or Carolina or, possibly New Orleans out of the NFC South.
Well, it's important to Dallas because it's not just the Jacksonville loss. It's that they could have lost to Houston at home.
Yep.
So we're now looking at a 2-game stretch where they have not been themselves. You don't want to be playing like that going into the postseason. And that's what they're doing right now. This is a nice opportunity against a backup quarterback to go out, play well, start pulling things back in the right direction as they go into the playoffs. And that's what I suspect would happen. But it's going to be a huge storyline if Gardner Minshew is able to go in and sweep the Cowboys and doing it this time on the road in this game.
Washington fell to the Giants last week in the rematch of the divisional matchup that we had seen twice in 3 games. Upcoming, we're going to have Chase Young back on the defense for the Commanders. The Commanders, over their last 9 games, are only allowing opponents 18 points per game, and they're getting their best player on defense back this week. I hope it's not too little too late because they're a great story. But I feel like the Giants' loss, I still feel like that game is a tie-break type deal for one, not both teams getting in the postseason.
I think they're plus 275 right now in their game this weekend, even after the Chase Young announcement. That'd be an interesting. I'm anxious to see Hutton's money line upsets over the weekend and see if that's under consideration.
Well, they've got the 49ers.
Yeah.
And that defense is also on par. That defense is better than Washington's.
Brock Purdy versus Taylor Heineke in this game also at quarterback. So, could be a low-scoring affair is my point.
Yeah.
Could be a field goal game either way. Great news for Washington. Their defense has been so good, though, without Chase Young. That's the amazing part about this team. And they've been able to stay in the mix with Heineke at quarterback. But, man, that was a terrible loss on Sunday Night Football to the Giants. So can they come back from it? They're gonna need to beat San Francisco in an upset, I think, to start to give themselves a chance.
Trey Wallace is on deck. We'll be discussing all things SEC and college football, peek ahead to the SEC bowl matchups and the big headlines from National Signing Day. All of that and more with Trey next on OutKick 360.
Welcome into the holiday edition of Guest. Happy to be joined today by SEC Mike. You guys know who he is. Michael Bratton joins us on the show. Mike, what's up, buddy? How are you?
Hey, Trey. It's always a treat having you on my show, that SEC podcast. So, hey, it's an honor to do your show.
Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on, and it's the holiday season. We've got bowl games going on. We got the transfer portal going on, signing day stuff going on. It's chaotic. It's never a day off in college football, as you know. So let's start in the transfer portal, Michael, where we have seen I think I saw a number that there were around 1,500 players in the transfer portal as we are having this conversation right now. And I would love to know your thoughts on how you think this has played out since the first day it opened, and then realizing we have got until January 19th, if I'm not mistaken, until this thing closes. What's your early thoughts on how this has played out?
Well, I mean, it's nothing short of amazing, to be honest with you, Trey. I keep track of all the players from the SEC that have jumped into the portal, and A&M's got over 20. Arkansas, Auburn, Florida, Alabama, they're close to those figures as well, just below A&M. But man, it's absolutely chaotic, and I don't know if it's a good for the sport. I don't know if it's bad for the sport, but I certainly think that teams like LSU and Ole Miss, I think they've kind of laid a blueprint. If you want to turn over your roster in a single offseason, it can be done. And I bet you Billy Napier, of course, they're kind of doing it now, but I bet Billy Napier kind of wishes he would have taken that tactic as well.
Glad you're with us. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays from all of us at OutKick. That includes Trey Wallace, who joins us. We'll find out where this holiday season. Trey Wallace, OutKick.com is where you can read his work and also check out the Trey Wallace podcast. Trey, Merry Christmas to you. Hope you're doing well.
Merry Christmas, guys. Hope everybody is doing well in Nashville, and you guys are getting ready for the apocalypse.
Yes,
Looks like it's coming.
It's going to be cold everywhere. Feels like this weekend.
I was running errands this morning, Trey, and it was a balmy 54 degrees here in Nashville, and looked down at my phone to see the projected temperature tonight, and it's going to get to teens in a matter of minutes, I think, for once the sun goes down this evening. So. Yeah, brace yourself.
I feel for the people. I feel for the people all over the country. I got a little brother that is hanging out in the Denver airport right now. So trust me, it's all over. It's crazy.
Trey, let's start this week with kind of recapping what happened yesterday and just the overall consensus of what the SEC got done on signing day. Let's start with Kentucky. Is there a bigger quote-unquote win than Kentucky landing Dennis Leary?
Devin Leary, sorry.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I mean, I think that they were taking a look at Graham Mertz from Wisconsin. They didn't particularly like what they saw, in my opinion, somebody that fits that system. And you look at Devin, man, go back and look at his numbers from last year. Go back and watch him play. There were a couple games where NC State was in it right there in the fourth quarter, pulling off upsets. I think everybody remembers that North Carolina game that was so much fun. You look at him and what he's going to be able to do in this system, which is, by the way, if folks forgot, this is Liam Cohen's system now, again at Kentucky, not Rich Scagnola. He has been let go. So it's going to look like what Kentucky was 2 years ago compared to what they were last year. So I think he fits in well. I think this is a great opportunity for him to establish himself in the SEC, and I think it's a better pickup compared to Graham Mertz. I do. I know Graham went to Florida. I'm not hating on Graham when I say that. I just think passing wise, I think this is a better fit for Kentucky. They're going to have to switch some things up though. That's obvious on offense.
So I think Hutton, by the way, said Dennis Leary because the actor Dennis Leary once just brutally made fun of me at a Super Bowl, and that footage is somewhere. I'm sure it's been burned by now, but it's been melted. Dennis Leary, though, I bet could play some mean quarterback also. I celebrate his entire catalog. Trey, looking at National Signing Day storylines in the SEC, Auburn goes from irrelevance to top 20 in Hugh Freeze's first class, and Hugh Freeze said, "Yeah, it was a little bit uncomfortable for me this next go around in the SEC, going into living rooms of kids and trying to persuade them from not going to other SEC programs and to come to this program instead." What did you make of Hugh Freeze's first recruiting class at Auburn?
Yeah, I thought they hit some of the key spots on defense, especially along the defensive line. I thought that when you look at what they're trying to do offensively, they shored it up with a wide receiver or two, in my opinion, that's going to pay dividends for Auburn. Like it is different, man. You've got a coach that's coming into a new spot, especially in the Southeastern Conference, and trying to re-recruit some of these players. Sylvester Smith, a defensive back that Tennessee was on for a very long time and committed to Tennessee. Once Hugh Freeze got down to Auburn and that staff went after him, he decided, okay, I'm gonna stay in the area. I'm gonna stay at Auburn. I think you saw that with a decent amount of players where, maybe the former staff wasn't as interested in what they were bringing. But now you bring a new staff in. You already had Carnell Williams, in the recruiting war room. He knew what he was looking for, especially on the offensive side of the football. So I think it's good what Hugh Freeze did. I think that it's hard to look. It's hard to come in immediately and try to turn that type of program around with everything that's gone on at Auburn. That's the biggest thing that stands out to me. So I give him a lot of credit. His social media game needs to pick up a little bit. The old Yahtzee tweet was kind of cringeworthy, but other than that, hey, solid day for Auburn doing what they're needing to do. And they missed out on one player to Alabama, but that's an obvious thing that's going to happen every single year.
Yeah, we'll get to Alabama and Georgia at the top, but tip of the cap to Mississippi State and Zach Arnett, and not just to him for keeping that class together after the untimely passing of head coach Mike Leach, but also to the kids in that class, who didn't look at this as, hey, my head coach died, so now I'm going to go somewhere else. They stuck to their commitment And I think that's honorable, where there wasn't a lot of that going on with the biggest storylines across college football. So kudos to everyone involved in Starkville and what they were able to do. That's a top 25 recruiting class nationally for the Bulldogs.
It's interesting when you look at some of the quotes that are coming out from some of the players, that they stuck around Mississippi State, but they were also Mike Leach's last class. And I think that goes a long way. And I honestly do. Now, does it fit for every single player in that recruiting class? No, that narrative won't go. But I think that overall, when you look at some of the linebackers they got, when you look at the wide receivers, and I'm right off the top of my head, I'm forgetting the player that came out and said, look, I didn't sway anywhere because I was honored to be offered by Mike Leach. And this is going to be the last class that Leach put together. And I think that's a very big deal. I do. And now look, will it translate to wins for Zach Arnett? Potentially. I think they did good on the defensive side. They've got some work to do on the offensive side of the football. But, I just, for all of these circumstances that have gone on at Mississippi State, when the coaches were pulled off the road, what was it, a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, when Mike Leach had passed away, and trying to scramble and make sure everything is going right on when it comes to recruiting, but also mourning the loss of your boss at the same time. I give credit to the staff for being able to put that together, stick with it. I think it was very smart of them to name Zach Arnett the head coach, and bless him. He gets up there. I'm going to love this guy. We're going to have him on the podcast. I know you guys are going to have him on 360. This guy gets up there and says, okay, no opening statement. Y'all just start asking questions. I thought that was beautiful. We need more of that in the Southeastern Conference. So bless you, Zach Arnett, and great job by State just kind of keeping it together under the circumstances.
A really cool tribute to Mike Leach with that also. And order is restored. Alabama missing out on a college football playoff, which is a rarity for that program, certainly did not affect their recruiting, Trey. Number one in the nation, 6 5-star players in this class. Second place is 3 different programs that had 3 5-stars. And there's Georgia right there nipping at their heels with 22 4-star players out of 25 in this class. 22 of the 25 are 4-star or better.
Alabama, I think Nick Saban was on a mission once that season was over, and everybody's like, okay, look, here comes the downfall of Alabama football. Look at the games that they lost this year. They're not in the playoffs. They're playing in the Sugar Bowl. The first thing was Bryce Young, Will Anderson deciding to play in the bowl game. And then all of a sudden he comes out with this recruiting class, guys. That's tremendous what they were able to do. And it's not just the players, it's how they got the players. It's also, throw away the NIL part of it. And I wrote an article today about Caden Proctor, offensive lineman, the offensive lineman of the 2023 class, and his decision. And I'll give you a quote here in a minute. But Nick Saban pretty much walked into that room, and I was talking to a couple of people about this down in Tuscaloosa. And over the last 4 weeks, they made a push for certain players that maybe weren't on their, I want to say radar, but maybe that they thought were going to another school. And they said, nope, I want him. I want that player. Nick Saban, I'm trying to be very PG with what I'm trying to say, but he just kind of threw it on out there and said, you know what, we're still Alabama. We're going to get the best players. And if you want to put up a fight, we can put up a fight. If you want to get in the NIL game, we'll get in the NIL game with you, and we're going to beat you, which is exactly what they did. So I give credit to Alabama for doing what they always do. And then guys, you look at Georgia, and Georgia comes back, and you said, look at all the 4-stars that they got. You can throw out a 5-star or 2 in that class and whatnot, but man, they just loaded up again on defense. Picking up a couple key pieces on offense. And I'm not stunned by this because that's what Kirby Smart's doing. But man, if he wins another national championship, guys, in 2 weeks, with the recruiting class that he's keep continuing to bring in, where there's no drop off, Kirby's making a run as one of the, maybe if not one of the best coaches in college football for what he's doing on the field and off the field.
Trey Wallace of OutKick with us on OutKick 360. Trey, Graham Mertz at Florida compared to Anthony Richardson at Florida. What do you think the offense is like next season compared to what we watched this year?
Completely different. I think Graham Mertz is the type of quarterback. I think we've all watched a Graham Mertz game. It feels like he was at Wisconsin for 18 years. But the way that he's able to, get outside the pocket, make plays with his feet, try to, if the pocket breaks down, he is able to find that receiver down the field. It's gonna look different. Like it's nothing like Anthony Richardson and what they were trying to do with Anthony Richardson on offense, which they finally let him loose with his legs later on in the season. Maybe because they felt like, okay, we've been kind of wasting this opportunity. But we saw so many key plays from Anthony Richardson, and I personally felt like, that young man probably could have used another year, in my opinion, underneath that system with Billy Napier, or just another year in college. I don't care if you want to go play somewhere else or not. But the fact that he came out, going to the NFL draft, and then Florida decides, okay, our third string quarterback's no longer here anymore. He's doing, 20 to 25 years. We got Jack Miller, the quarterback who transferred down from Ohio State. You got Rashada, who's coming in, 5-star quarterback, going to be playing for the Gators, but he's not going to be ready. So you bring in Graham Mertz, a veteran of the college football game, and we'll see if he makes a run at the starting spot next year. He's going to get his opportunities. So, I think this is a nice little plug where, okay, you got Graham in there, and then go, you can try to get Rashada available to play here in maybe a year or so. It's kind of the same thing that's going on with Nico in Tennessee and whatnot. Some of these 5-stars just aren't ready to go. So good for them that they have a plug-in right now. We'll see if he lasts long at Florida and what he can do on the field.
I mean, it's easy to talk about the quarterbacks, and those are the ones we talked about. Leary, talking about Mertz. Those are the ones that are going to change the fortunes, good or bad, for programs with one player. But there are a lot of important transfers out there that we don't pay as much attention to, Trey. Tony Grimes, 5-star corner, top corner in the country a year ago, going from North Carolina to A&M, announced today. Another one, I know you're there in Knoxville normally, that I didn't even know the kid was in the transfer portal. And then I see that he is committed to Tennessee. Keenan Pili, who was a 3-year starter at BYU, one of their leading tacklers as a middle linebacker, someone that comes right in and takes the place of Jeremy Banks, probably in the middle of the defense. These aren't moves across the country that we spend a lot of time talking about, but this is the level of defensive transfer that can change the fortunes completely of some defenses out there, especially when you talk about it specifically with Tennessee, paired with their offense, knowing they need help on the defensive side of the ball.
The fact that Tennessee was able to go out and quietly get, a linebacker from BYU who's captain, multiple times at BYU, look at his numbers, look at his stature as well. I mean, the guy's 6'3", 220, kind of fits that hybrid mold of a linebacker. That's massive. And a lot of people, like, to me, it would be him and Aaron Beasley next year at linebacker for Tennessee. Now, Tennessee has younger players as well, but I don't want to pencil them in as a starter right now. Just, they got to go through spring and whatnot, a lot. Herring is one of them. But you look at Tennessee able to do that, you're plugging in that key spot. And I think Tennessee, they have been somewhat active. You pick up an offensive lineman or two. You get a defensive star, in my opinion, to fill in that spot of Jeremy Banks, Juwan Mitchell. So it'll be interesting to see, in my opinion, what happens after spring practice, because Josh Heupel, when he first got there, he made a lot of additions after spring ball, filled in a couple spots, some key spots. You can think of Brandon Turnage. You can think of Kamal Haddon. as something on the defensive side of the ball. And I know that's Tim Banks and whatnot doing that, but I think you're going to see a good amount of maybe some movement on that side, probably after spring practice ends. Now, look, after these bowl games are over with, over the next 2 weeks, there's going to be, in my opinion, a good amount of players hit the portal again. I'm saying like another round. I don't think you're going to see like we saw before, but you're going to give opportunities for teams, like Tennessee or Texas A&M to potentially go find another stud to be able to plug into that starting unit. I agree. That's massive for A&M and for a team that just played horrible this year and everything is going against A&M. I guess, and Jimbo wants to come out yesterday. God love Jimbo Fisher, but he wants to come out yesterday and complain about NIL and, I didn't expect this to happen. Well, okay, look what you did with the 2022 class. Let's not be oblivious. I feel like that it's very key for certain schools to be picky with who they go and get. I think Tennessee and A&M did a really good job the last 2 days.
Trey, next time you'll join us, the game will be final. South Carolina and Notre Dame. How do you expect Shane Beamer's team to play in the Gator Bowl compared to how they finished the season with the 2 wins?
I mean, I think, look, a lot of has been made of South Carolina. That momentum is gone. That the losses. Beamer had that press conference. I know you guys have seen it, where he kind of went off and he was like, "Man, did you guys forget what happened? At the end of the season?" And then all of a sudden,
by the way, I'm so glad that Hutton brought in the video of that where he name drops 15 different with the Dow Loggins press conference. And I don't know, have you guys talked to Bill Parcells? Have you talked to Michael Jordan? Have you talked to Phil Jackson about this guy? He's going through name after name. Anyway, that was too funny.
My man named 11 different coaches during that press conference, which was beautiful. And then what do? They go out and get Trey Knox from Arkansas, a fantastic receiver / tight end, however you want to play him. So good for South Carolina. And I think that they're going to be fine. I think you don't have to – I don't know how much hype you have to give to a football team to go play Notre Dame in the state of Florida. Like, I think that does it itself, to be honest with you. And I think Shane Beamer is going to have his group ready to go. I mean, Spencer Rattler is going to play in this game. You are still going – I know you don't have Marshawn Lloyd and Jaheim Bell, who went to Florida State, but you've still got a team that's excited to cap off the season. And I'll say this too, if there were any other game, like if it was against Illinois or Purdue or something like that, maybe you would see, not as much excitement, but you're playing Notre Dame. And I think that's a big to do. And I think that's why you'll see a lot of Gamecock fans down there. And I think once we get closer to the bowl game, I think that's when, excitement level will go up. But look, South Carolina fans freaked out for about 5 days now. Shane Beamer told them to chill out, calm down. I've got this. And if they trust Shane Beamer, maybe they'll get something out of it.
Trey, I've never been more excited about a Gasparilla Bowl than I am with this one on Friday night. Friday at 5:30 Central Time, in fact. Missouri and Wake Forest. I think Sam Hartman's playing in this game, so I'm excited about that from the Wake Forest front. And, Trey, with Eli Drinkwitz and his program, this is one that most of the time you look, okay, SEC school 6-6 in this type of bowl game doesn't really matter. But I do think that Drinkwitz is the type of guy who can parlay success in a win in this game into other things. And this is important for Missouri to finish the season above 500 and beat a really good quarterback in Hartman and Wake Forest. What do you think about the matchup and what it means for Missouri?
Oh, I think it's huge for Brady Cook and Eli Drinkwitz. Like that's the big thing for me. Like, I'm excited to see Sam Hartman play in a bowl game. Now, is he going to be at Wake Forest after that bowl game? We'll see. Dave Clawson has said specifically that he's, if he gets, an offer to go somewhere else, he's not going to blame it. But look, Missouri needs a win.
By the way, how refreshing of Dave Clawson to be that brutally honest, that his star quarterback, and he's saying, he's going to have to look at the options because he's going to get offered a lot of money. And I don't know if he's calling out his own fan base and program or he's just stating reality and knows that he's never going to have an NIL pot of money at Wake Forest. It's just not reality there.
I think that's massive. I think it's for him to say that he knows that Sam Hartman's going to get offers and he would not blame him if he took another one. That's saying, yeah, we can't afford it. Okay, first off. But second of all, he's not oblivious to what's going on in college football. He's not out doing radio shows like Pat Narduzzi where he's throwing out allegations of money being thrown at Drake May, but he's too scared to name who the coaches are, or Jimbo, or you can go on the list, Mac Brown. All we've seen is coaches complain about tampering and these NIL deals. Okay, well, if you're that pissed off enough, name names. I know it's a good old boys club. I get it. But if you're going to come out here and make these just blatant statements, start naming names. So I give credit to Dave Clawson on that. But the bowl game overall, I am excited for it. Maybe it's just because it's college football. But getting to see a player like Sam Hartman play against a Missouri defense that's pretty darn decent, in my opinion, I think this is, a Gasparilla Bowl that I'm not going to miss. And look, overall, I think Eli Drinkwitz better end this thing on a high note. I know he signed an extension, but paper is it's just not worth it. Whatever you write it on, it's not worth the ink. So I just feel like Missouri better cap this thing off well, but it's going to be darn hard to do against Sam Hartman and that offense.
We're near the end of our chat with you, and we haven't even mentioned the name Lane Kiffin. And we had a big signing day yesterday. How did he do? And I know they've got Texas Tech coming up next week on the Wednesday, I believe. But this is much ado about nothing right now in Oxford compared to the rest of the SEC and compared to what we've seen Kiffin do in the headlines prior to signing day.
Yeah, 28th nationally in the On3 consensus ranking, so just outside the top 25, Trey.
Guys, I got an email probably 5 minutes before I came on the air from Ole Miss saying, hey, we're excited to have our 12 players, early sign. I think with Lane Kiffin and what he's trying to do offensively, I think, with Jackson Dart next season, I think with their running game, we went from a time with Lane Kiffin where all the talk was about Kiffin and the Auburn job. And then he didn't take it. Okay, now the media kind of dies down a little bit on Lane Kiffin. They put together, they found their needs, but they didn't make any splashes. They didn't do anything that's like shocking. And what did we hear over the last 4 weeks? All we've heard is NIL, Grove Collective, NIL, Grove Collective. And I'm not blaming them at all. I'm just saying there wasn't that splash that you would think out of a Lane Kiffin squad in the recruiting period. Now, I say that to say this. Still got February. You've still got time in this transfer portal for him to go out and do something big, which I promise you he's trying to do. And he probably will, if we're being honest with each other as well. Mm-hmm. I just feel like yesterday was kind of I don't want to call it a dud, but it was just kind of one of those, okay, Ole Miss did their thing. And, if it goes to show you anything, I just got the email announcing their class, and everybody does that last night. So it probably could have done a lot better, but I think over the next month and a half, you're still going to see Lane Kiffin do some things when it comes to the portal. And then when they trying to sign maybe a player or two when it comes to February, they've got the space, as you can tell with the number of players they signed yesterday.
Go to OutKick.com, click on shows. You can download all of the podcasts, listen to all the podcasts right there across the OutKick network, including the Trey Wallace podcast. And Trey, if we go there right now, what will we find this week?
Yeah, absolutely. I had Michael Bratton on, SEC Mike. Great guest, great opinions on what's going on in college football. We just had an in-depth conversation of what's going on with NIL, the money that's being thrown around right now. Guys, it's crazy now. Guys, it's crazy. It really is. But this is college football and free agency. That's what it's turned into. And the amount of money being offered some of these players is pretty wild. Got into that. Talked about things that are going on in College Station and Knoxville. Talked a little college football playoff. We did just about everything, guys. So If you want, go to the website, click on it, Apple, Spotify, all that good stuff. Check it out. And again, we're just continuing to grow here at OutKick, and I'm just happy to be a part of it.
Absolutely.
Glad to have you on this show as well. Trey Wallace, go to OutKick.com. You can read all the SEC coverage there. Trey, Merry Christmas to you.
Guys, Merry Christmas. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. You guys do tremendous work. This has been a fantastic year, and happy holidays. Merry Christmas to everybody watching.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah,
Looking forward to
appreciate
2023. Thank you, Trey.
Trey Wallace there. Again, OutKick.com for all of the SEC coverage and much more. Coming up, we have Pro Football Doc in about 15 minutes. Dr. David Chao. He will go through some of the bigger injuries across the NFL. We'll talk Jalen Hurts, Ryan Tannehill, Odell Beckham Jr., and what we can expect him to be like. We know he came off the injury and then signed free agent-wise with the Rams. Now it sounds like he's going to land in Dallas. We'll get the doc's opinion on the recovery time there. And when we come back, updated NFL draft order, and there's a team that could hurt their stock based on who they're playing this week. That's next on Outkick 360.
Yeah, I think because things, transitioned from that regime side to that fundamentalist side. So we also had to change some of our tactics and our procedures and everything else and how we did things to cope with these guys, because they were coming up with some ingenious ways of doing things along the line as well, with some of the IEDs, some of the, the booby trapping the houses, things like that, using the cell phones to call to detonate everything. So it became, I think, as much as you say, more violent in that way, because with the regime guys too, we knew that there was the end state was trying to get Saddam, so that we needed intel as well. We needed to gather that intelligence. There was only so much that was there from previous, just historical data. Then we had to actually make it real intel and workable intel. But with the fundamentalists, if you gave them a chance to vote, and we'd say vote based off, okay, does this guy want to is he going to go along with the capture, or is he wanting to fight? And then let's see who wins. They would rather fight than do anything. There was, so many times guys would detonate suicide vests, because it's like, well, they're not going to take me, clack themselves off, thinking they're killing, other folks around them. But, they just, I don't know, they just were different folks. And it was like we had to get more violent in a way, because again, we were going after intel and doing things, and our procedures and everything on the battlefield just had to kind of adjust, just like they were doing.
That's crazy. I truly cannot imagine. And I was in college. I started college in 2010. So I was in high school when things were getting kind of real bad in the 06, 07 era. And I remember people would always talk about do we really need to be fighting these guys? Are they really that bad? I'm like, this Zarqawi guy's literally chopping people's heads off, right? And don't think it stops there. Like, if this guy could, he'd chop all of our heads off too. Fortunately, they dropped a couple bombs on him, I believe, if I recall correctly. So now I want to get into some comparing and contrasting. What were the big differences between fighting in Iraq versus fighting in Afghanistan? Was it mostly the terrain? Was it the level of the combatant? Like, what were the big takeaways that were different from each other?
I think early on with Afghanistan was, everything was so spread out. Everything was so far in between, and we didn't have many helo assets early in the war, just because of how, basically really having to share them along with the other task force and things like that. And so there was a lot more driving, or you would get flown to an area and then you'd be there for a bit, and then, you're not getting there, you're not getting back to your home base for a while. So you're trying to make do of it, and literally just sometimes sitting around doing. But then within Iraq, you had more cities, bigger cities, everything else that we were hitting. Granted, you had Kandahar, you had Kabul, but everything really wasn't happening in those locations. It was farther out, because, where the terrorists had their training camps from, years before us ever getting there. But then within Iraq, they could hide right there in the cities. There were, so much, just open roads, everything around. And everything else, at a lot more built up areas, and it was an easier road system to get around. So it made it easier for them as well to move around. The terrain, definitely changed throughout. Iraq, you had your river valleys in a way, and you had the humidity, you had palm groves, everything else. And then you had your rocky mountain areas, dry areas. But then Afghanistan was just so severe with the mountains. I mean, that that's some treacherous terrain in itself.
OutKick 360 rolls on across the OutKick network. 3 weeks to play in the NFL. That means in 21 days roughly, Chad will know who's going to have the number 1 overall pick.
I can't wait. And then the speculation can begin on which quarterback it's going to be at number 1.
Well, the Houston Texans right now have a 2-game advantage over the Chicago Bears. The Bears jumped ahead of the Seahawks this past week. But, of course, the Seattle Seahawks have Denver's pick. But with Denver beating Arizona, Chicago is back up to the number 2 overall draft position. But let's just start at number 1. The way the Texans have played, albeit in losses, I think they're going to beat the Titans this week. And the Titans, every single one of their offensive linemen from last week is on the injury report right now. They have officially ruled out Ryan Tannehill, which means Malik Willis is starting. And they're not scoring more than 17 points, roughly. Houston's been putting up some points. They've been going toe-to-toe with 2 teams. The best in the league went to overtime in Kansas City, or against Kansas City. I don't think they win 2 of their final 3, but they have the Titans this week, and they have Jacksonville next week. And it's not out of the realm of possibility. They could win both of those games and somehow not get the number 1 overall pick.
That is not what they need. They need that number 1 overall pick for a quarterback-needy team. I'm looking at that game with it. How are the Texans so motivated is what I'm thinking the last 2 weeks.
Yeah,
they look like a young, hungry roster that still has a lot to play for. And I'm looking at temps this upcoming weekend, and it's going to feel like, your favorite thing, Hutton, feel like 5 or 7 degrees in Nashville.
Yep.
I don't see either one of these teams overly motivated right now. But then I watch the way the Texans have looked, and certainly the Titans' defense looked a lot more motivated against the Chargers this past weekend. But what is that game going to look like? And the implications, not just for playoffs, but like we're laying out, for the possible number 1 overall pick, could be huge in this game.
Yeah, no doubt. And keep in mind, Seattle and Detroit this week. Right now, Seattle and Detroit have the 3rd and 4th overall selections. via Denver with Seattle and courtesy of the Rams with Detroit. Denver and LA play this week, and both of the teams there, you've got a situation where the loser is going to benefit one of these good teams with Seattle or Detroit. So keep in mind, other franchises will be watching that matchup over the holiday season. Someone's going to have a very Merry Christmas.
We'll be watching all of it, Hutton. We'll be having a Merry Christmas and a Merry time watching these games.
Pretty big game tonight for playoff implications for Jacksonville. They've got the Jets. Zach Wilson against Trevor Lawrence. Speaking of draft order, number 1 versus number 2, head-to-head on Thursday Night Football. When we come back, we'll head to the doc. We've got the Pro Football doc. Dr. David Chao will go through the NFL injuries, starting with Jalen Hurts and Ryan Tannehill. That's next on OutKick 360.
What's up, guys? It's Tommy, and in case you missed my last episode, here's what you missed. Well, the Senate voted 70-25 to proceed with the $1.7 trillion omnibus spending bill. If you're wondering what's in that monstrosity that'll benefit you, well, feel free to read all 4,000 pages of it, or just safely assume not a whole freaking lot. So allow me to just give you a few of the highlights. Here's a good place to start. It prohibits CBP funding from being used to improve border security because it's not like the invasion at our southern border is something Democrats or rhinos would care to address. Oh, but you'll be comforted to know the bill allocates $410 million towards border security for other nations, namely Jordan, Lebanon, Egypt, Tunisia, and Oman. Good for them. Glad we could help out. And we're certainly not done funding Ukraine. Apparently, that is a top priority for Republicans, in name only.
Providing assistance for the Ukrainians to defeat the Russians, that's the number one priority for the United States right now, according to most Republicans. That's sort of how we see the challenges confronting the country at the moment.
Ukraine gets another $45 billion, and just for good measure, a Ukrainian Independence Park will be created in Washington, D.C., so special and giving of us, huh? Magical. But wait, there's more. Also included is $1.438 billion in spending for membership in global multilateral organizations, including the United Nations, $65 million for restoring Pacific salmon populations, $3 million for bee-friendly highways, and an additional $5 million in further spending for salmon. Damn sure would be nice to be a salmon instead of a taxpayer, huh? But if you thought the radical leftist agenda smashed into this bill ended there, well, wrong. There's $575 million in spending for family planning or reproductive health in the bill targeted to areas where population growth threatens biodiversity or endangered species, whatever the hell that means. Oh, and you'll be delighted to know earmarks have also been added to fund the celebration of Democrats, such as naming a federal building after Nancy Pelosi and a trail named after Michelle Obama. But folks, according to the press, both sides are claiming victory with this joke of a bill. And when I say both sides, I mean Democrats, Mitch McConnell, and the establishment. This is such an embarrassment, and mostly for Republicans, because once again, we've given D.C. a blank check to go buck wild, and once again, we've trusted so-called Republicans not to. In case you're wondering, that was a big fat freaking mistake. At this point, we might as well just start flushing our own money down the toilet and take out the government middleman. Tune in tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern on OutKick.com. I will be joined by the one and only Kirk Cameron, who was denied story time hours in public libraries because of his faith-based book. You don't want to miss it.
OutKick 360 rolls on. Hour number 2 is here. 6th and Peabody, our location, with Yeehaw Beer, Old Smoky Moonshine, coming up in a matter of minutes. Pro Football Doc, Dr. David Chao will be with us. We'll run through the big injuries for Week 16 across the NFL, headlined by Jalen Hurts, who is not going to play this week for Philadelphia. Gardner Minshew will get the start. And Chad, Ryan Tannehill, Gaharski put it out there yesterday, maybe done for the season. And is likely done for the season. That means it's the Malik Willis show for the remaining at least 3 games of the regular season. Maybe one more, maybe not, based on how they've been playing and how Jacksonville continues to play. Jacksonville takes on the Jets tonight. Trevor Lawrence against Zach Wilson.
Bad news for the Titans with Tannehill. Them just now trying to hold on to that playoff spot in the AFC South and still having a great chance at doing so. But it's almost the mode of now you got to see what you got in Malik Willis. If you know that Tannehill's out based on Paul Kuharsky's report, then you got to roll with Malik Willis. And it's, to me, much less now about getting that extra home game in the playoffs and much more about finding out what you have in the 3rd-round pick. And if there's been a lot of improvement over the course of this season from where he started, which, let's face it, was virtually zero when he got to this team in terms of an NFL NFL quarterback, if he's improved over the course of the year, like Mike Vrabel claims he's worked hard at improving and commanding the huddle and huddling even for that matter, but doing all these things, if he shows that improvement on the field, then the Titans should absolutely roll with him a year from now and then continue to see what you have with Malik Willis. But I'm skeptical that that's going to be the case.
I am too, and I'm skeptical not necessarily 100% because of Malik Willis, because of the Titans' offensive line. I mean, it could get really bad on Saturday as the Titans host the Texans. Every single one of their starters, by the way, the offensive line with the starters, not good. Every single one of those guys are on the injury report this week, and that means we could see, if not hobbled, but some other backups. And the backups from last week, like Dylan Radins, on injured reserve this week. So it's not like they have a lot of options, and it's not going to get any easier over the final 3 weeks. That is for sure. Some of the headlines out there today, just across the league. Let's start with Thursday Night Football. It's a big matchup for Jacksonville. If Jacksonville, if they win and the Titans lose on Saturday, the Jacksonville Jaguars, Chad, are going to have the lead in the AFC South with 2 games to play. And the Titans need the Jags to lose at least 1 game. If they can win 2, then they go into the final week with an option of taking the South. There is another scenario where we could see both of these teams lose and you have a winner-take-all possibility.
Yeah.
And then you have the scenario where Jacksonville's got it locked up by the end of the year because of how they handle the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's a huge week for sure, and it's a big game tonight. I'll be watching, but also, we just talked about Malik Willis in the division, the continued progression of Trevor Lawrence at quarterback.
Yes.
It's another big test for him. This is a team that's turned their season around. They look dead in the water. Now they got a good chance at possibly winning the AFC South, and Trevor Lawrence continues to impress. Another test for him in this game on a short turnaround, playing on Thursday night in a game with big-time stakes. Hutton, we haven't seen the Jacksonville Jags play a lot of games with big-time stakes.
You're right.
In recent seasons, and this is one of them.
Well, and the Jets' defense is the matchup to watch against Trevor Lawrence and company. Sauce Gardner on the outside on the island, he wasn't even targeted last week, not one time last week in the game. And it's the most we've seen from a rookie corner, most targets or most pass plays without a target in quite some time across the league. Teams aren't even looking his way. I'm curious if Lawrence does and what comes of that for against a defense that has, I believe, they're fifth in points, 5th in scoring for the defense, meaning they're great. They've only allowed 18.8 points per game on average.
It's not bad.
But it's too little too late, I think, for New York.
Yeah, no, not bad at all. But it's still fun to think about for the first time in a while, Hutton, the state of New York football with the Giants and the Jets. But I still, you look at both of them, and who's the quarterback of the future for both franchises? There's still some questions about that.
Quarterback this week for Philadelphia is Gardner Minshew because Jalen Hurts has been ruled out with the sprained shoulder. With more, we welcome in Pro Football Doc. Dr. David Chao, who joins us. Always great to have you back on the show, and hope all is well. I'm assuming you're still out west, right?
Yeah, all is well with me, except my computer link didn't work.
Oh.
So we're going phone.
We got you, man. It's all good. The shoulder sprain, they choose to rule him out now. They didn't want to do that previously. I guess in your mind, is this a long-term play here for Philadelphia?
It's a long-term play. It's not a long-term injury.
Okay.
This is a mild AC joint sprain that was suffered at 1:13 left in the third quarter. He played well in the fourth quarter. He could play against Dallas, maybe with an AC joint injection. But the Eagles are trying to play the long game, as you say here, and preserve him. They're 3 up with 3 to go. They're hoping to cruise in. And, you can argue that this is smart to not make it worse and see what happens. The Eagles historically have always tried to play a few smart roster games. If you remember last year, the final week of the season, they tested everyone for COVID and placed about a dozen people on the COVID list and had more subs and were able to rest more veterans. Legal gamesmanship.
Obviously, sitting him to not take a hit on the injury and further risk making it worse. What does rest do for an AC joint injury like this in terms of what they can get with just a week of taking it easy on this injury?
Well, every week it's better. Every day it's a little better, a little less sore. Like I said, it's something I believe he could play through. If this were a meaningful game, if this were the playoffs, 100% Jalen Hurts would start and play. But they have 3 weeks left, potentially a bye, and they wouldn't play until the 5th week from now. So I don't see him sitting all 3 weeks. I don't see him waiting all that period of time due to rust, but at least this week, and then we'll see.
So Ryan Tannehill is not going to play the remainder of the season based on reports. Ankle injury, bad ankle sprain. I feel like it's always a little bit, at least for me, for the layman that's not a doctor, a little bit vague when you're dealing with a sprain as an injury. From what you've seen from Ryan Tannehill, the extent of the injury, how common is this, and what do you think about the decision to not play the remainder of the season?
Well, it's sort of an interesting turn of events. In game, it looked like to us, we monitor all the games of the Sports Injury Central Command Center. It looked like a high ankle sprain, right ankle sprain. And we were writing and saying that it was dubious that he would be able to return effectively. Yet he did. How effectively is up to question. But the bottom line is he did finish the game limping a little bit. And now he's out and maybe for a prolonged period of time through the end of the season. No question, things can swell overnight after the game. Kudos to Ryan Tannehill for trying to play through. Maybe he got a game day injection, and now he's out for longer. We'll have to see how long, if it really is to the end of the season. But obviously the Titans are swooning, and they have issues on both sides of the ball. Now Ryan Tannehill, offensive lineman, they've had defensive issues for the last couple of weeks. We've been fading them the last couple of weeks based on the linebackers, the DBs. They're among the more injured teams in the league right now, Tennessee Titans.
I'm sure in your years in the league, you were probably a part of a team that had similar issues, or maybe not, because the Titans, when you look at the numbers, they're really, really bad with injuries. And over half their starters now out from the start of the year. Not just that, the backup sometimes is out. And they're on third and fourth string guys in certain positions. When that starts to happen, do you take a deep dive as a team doctor, as a strength conditioning coach, to look in the mirror and say, is there anything we can do to prevent this? Or do you chalk pretty much all of it up to just bad luck, unfortunate circumstance?
Well, when I was a head team physician, we never had this because we always fixed everybody. Just kidding, right? It's the contact sport of football, right? It happens. It happens to everybody. But we do look at it. But you have to look at it from the inside. You can't just say it's just bad luck or just his turf or just something, lack of rehab or strength and conditioning issues. Injuries clearly beget injuries. There's lots of reasons to get injuries. Sometimes it's just bad luck. Sometimes it's player selection and signing of players that may not be fully healthy and coming into the year, and then they end up with more things going on. Sometimes it's the talent level. Sometimes it's scheme. Sometimes it's how hard someone is practicing or not practicing, etc. And bad luck factors in. Yeah, I think you have to look at all the different things before you make up your mind and blame one part of the business. And you have to remember the medical staff. I used to always report injuries to the GM, and there was a couple of occasions where the GM was like, "Oh, you're always bringing me this bad news," and basically blaming me. I had to remind the GM, "Look, I'm Paul Revere. I'm not the British. I'm just telling you they're coming. The injuries are here. I'm not telling you. I'm not causing injuries." And there's, position groups that get hit because when backups play more, are they as talented as the starters? They may not give up their role on special teams because the special teams coach wants them. They get run ragged a little bit. And, the higher talented players don't get injured as the lesser talented players.
Dr. David Chao, our guest, Pro Football Doc, is where you can find him on social media. Odell Beckham Jr., of course, in the headlines, highly sought after in discussions by teams that are going to be in the postseason. Injury-wise, recovering from the ACL, what timetable do you believe him to be on, and what did you make of the reports that there were some questions about when he would be available in January coming out of Dallas?
Well, recovery from any injury, especially an ACL, is not a light switch. It's not like on this date you can't and the next day you're 100%. That's not the way it works. It's all gradual. And if you go back to Odell Beckham last year, he had an October ACL, and he really kind of rounded into form in December when he joined the Rams, right?
Yes.
So the earlier part of the season was not that positive. Now, this is a February ACL tear and a second one, so you do the math, right? It's not surprising that he's not fully ready to go in December. January, I'm not sure he's going to be fully ready to go, but could he help a squad? Maybe, right? I don't think he's going to be 100% until really going into next season, but he's talented enough that someone may take a chance on him to bring him in.
There's the word sprain again with an injury, and it's with Lamar Jackson. A knee sprain has kept him out. He's going to be out again this upcoming week. Doctor, what do you see with that injury and with a knee sprain like the one suffered with Lamar Jackson?
Well, what we said in game when it first happened was it was a PCL sprain to the left knee and the way he landed on the knee. And at that point, we said this was a multi-week absence. Would be lucky to return at the end of December. Won't need surgery. Isn't the end of the season, but multi-weeks. And here's where we're at. This is the third week and he's out. Will he make it next week? It depends on the degree and the severity of the PCL, but there's actually damage to the posterior cruciate ligament. At least it's not surgical, and we're actually not surprised. And the Ravens are another team that keeps getting hit with injuries. Not only Lamar Jackson, but obviously now both wide receivers out to the point where they brought back Sammy Watkins, who got cut from the Packers. They got defensive injuries, Marcus Peters, Calais Campbell, etc., and others. And you talk about injuries like Marcus Peters coming off an ACL. We said it'd be a subpar year. It doesn't surprise us that he gets a soft tissue injury with a calf or something else. So that's not necessarily bad luck. It's the previous year injury carrying over. Ronnie Stanley at left tackle was the previous year's injury carrying over. Lamar Jackson getting injured. Look, he's a very mobile running quarterback. He extends plays. That's what makes him great. That puts him at more risk for injury, just like last December. So it's not all just pure bad luck. There's lots of reasons that factor into this when we look at it and study it.
To this point, which team or teams have been in the best shape injury-wise? And, of course, with 3 games to go, that can quickly change. But is it normally the teams that are running the top of the NFL, so to speak, like KC and Philly?
Well, there's correlation, but it's not absolute, okay? I mean, there was a while there that the Bills got banged up a little bit, including Josh Allen. They're still near the top, but then again, during that streak, they actually lost a couple games. Right now, Kansas City is among the healthiest, and they have been for a while. Near the bottom right now, all season has been Denver Broncos. They obviously haven't done well. Arizona Cardinals, the Rams, especially on offense, right? Just to name a few. So you can start to see the correlation. even the Green Bay Packers that are rebounding a little bit now, we faded them at the beginning of the season because of their left tackle and right tackle injuries coming into the season. So it's not absolute, but there definitely is correlation. I mean, until the Titans' recent stretch of injuries, they were cruising pretty well, and the injuries have now caught up to them. But yeah, there's a few of these outliers that are out there.
Dr. David Chao, you can read his work and check out all the links in reaction to the injuries in real time and his analysis soon thereafter of what he's seen on game day. You can check him out at Pro Football Doc on social. Always appreciate the time and the insight.
Oh, no problem. And also lots of OutKick articles and things too, talking about injury analysis.
You got
Absolutely. We'll check
It's
it
a
all out.
great follow. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Check it out at outkick.com as well. Dr. David Chao has been our guest. So during this discussion we were having with him, the Titans have added 2 more players to injured reserve. Starting center Ben Jones to IR with a concussion. He's done for the year. And Terrence Mitchell, their corner that they signed, was it week 2, I think, off the street? He's also headed to injured reserve.
Who had played okay at times in a reserve spot, having to step into just a bad situation.
And the Titans, the glue guy on the offensive line has been Ben Jones. And now you have a backup rookie, probably taking snaps from Daniel Munyer, who was known for fumbling and barely getting the snap off to quarterbacks during training camp last year. He's been on the practice squad this year. It's going to be awful.
What an awful spot for Malik Willis.
Yes.
Who is still trying to learn the position of NFL quarterback to step in and step behind this offensive line with these receiving options around him.
Coming up, we've got former NFL head coach Dave McGinnis, currently the color commentator and analyst for Titans Radio. He will join us with a great story. We'll go back in the memory of Coach Mack when he first met Franco Harris in college. That's next on OutKick 360.
Welcome into the holiday edition of the Trey Wallace podcast. Happy to be joined today by SEC Mike. You guys know who he is. Michael Bratton joins us on the show. Mike, what's up, buddy? How are you?
Hey, Trey. It's always a treat having you on my show, that SEC podcast. So, hey, it's an honor to do your show.
Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on, and it's the holiday season. We've got bowl games going on. We got the transfer portal going on, signing day stuff going on. It's chaotic. It's never a day off in college football, as you know. So let's start in the transfer portal, Michael, where we have seen, I think I saw a number that there were around 1,500 players in the transfer portal as we are having this conversation right now. And I would love to know your thoughts on how you think this has played out since the first day it opened, and then realizing we have got until January 19th, if I'm not mistaken, until this thing closes. What's your early thoughts on how this has played out?
Well, I mean, it's nothing short of amazing, to be honest with you, Trey. I keep track of all the players from the SEC that have jumped into the portal, and A&M's got over 20. Arkansas, Auburn, Florida, Alabama, they're close to those figures as well, just below A&M. But, man, it's absolutely chaotic. And I don't know if it's a good for the sport. I don't know if it's bad for the sport. But I certainly think that teams like LSU and Ole Miss, I think they've kind of laid a blueprint. If you want to turn over your roster in a single offseason, it can be done. And I bet you Billy Napier, of course, they're kind of doing it now, but I bet Billy Napier kind of wishes he would have taken that tactic as well.
Live from 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Merry Christmas to you. Happy holidays. With Chad Withrow, I'm Jonathan Hutton. Plenty to discuss across the NFL. That's coming up shortly. We'll also chat a little bit about some weekend matchups with our next guest, who joins us by phone right here in Nashville, wrapping up some availability, I believe, with the Titans practice and of what they could get done in a practice for a team that's so banged up. Dave McGinnis joins us, radio analyst for Titans Radio, great friend of ours and longtime coach. Now over 35 years of his life has been spent in the National Football League. Coach Mack, how are you?
Hut, how you doing, man? I'm doing good. You and Chad there holding it down at 6th and Peabody. I'm doing good.
Yeah, and I was telling Chad that you and I had dinner, or we met up, last week sometime, I believe. And I heard a story I'd never heard you tell, and it just so happened to be about Franco Harris. And we've been certainly covering his passing and what he meant to the NFL. I had not heard your discussion about your time at college at TCU, and one of the lasting memories being, from what you can remember at least, being playing against Franco Harris in Penn State. I'll let you pick it up from there. But it is a classic story that we will not soon forget.
Well, first of all, I mean, I met Franco personally and have had dinner with him because, Joe Green was my defensive line coach, both when I was the coordinator and the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals for 8 years. So during that tenure, Joe would have a lot of those guys would come through during the season, to see him, and Franco being one of them, Terry Bradshaw being one of them, Mel Blount, Flynn Swan. I mean, he had a lot of guys come through because, that group was very special, and Joe was a big, big part of that group. So anyway, got to meet a lot of those guys and sit down with them, had dinner with Joe and Franco. And during that dinner with Franco, I told him, I said, Franco, he said, hey, nice to meet you, coach. I said, you know what, actually, we've already met once. I'm not sure you remember it. I'm not sure I remember a lot of it, but I remember it, a little bit of it when it happened. TCU, we went up to play them. It was in 1971. We were a decent team. We finished third that year in the Southwest Conference. We were undefeated at home, 4-0-1. We tied Oklahoma State. It was back before you had, you could have a tie. You had no overtime rules. But we got beat by Texas, Arkansas, and University of Washington, which were all, top 10 teams at the time, and Penn State. I think we went up there in late October to play Penn State. At the time, we were 2-2-1, a decent team. We go up there to play Penn State. I believe it was their homecoming, too. So anyway, we're up there at State College, and, we're feeling pretty good about ourselves because, we've got a good team. And, we ended up, as I said, really good in the Southwest Conference. So we go to play Penn State. We had a guy on our team named Freddie Pouncey, and the Pouncey family was out of Dallas, and they were a group of guys that had several Pouncey brothers that were really, really big track stars in the state of Texas. Well, Freddie was also a football player. He's a shorter guy, receiver, but he's a great kick returner. Opening kickoff, Freddie takes it back about 82 yards for a touchdown up there in State College, and we're all fired up, feeling good about it. Well, they come back and they score. We kick off and they score. And then, the game starts progressing. And about 66-14 later, Penn State celebrating homecoming. But after our second touchdown, I'm a starter, but I'm also on special teams, and so we kick off, and I'm going down the field on the kickoff, and everything's good. Well, they line up, and I think they've already scored about 30 on us. I'm playing safety back there at the time, and all of a sudden they run a weak side lead out of an I formation to the open side. And, they crush everybody we have on the defensive front and at the linebacker spot. And all of a sudden, now, here's the team. John Huffnagel, remember that name?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
He's the quarterback. Bob Parsons was the tight end. They had a team. They finished 11-1 that year. They were a really, really good football team. Ended up beating Texas in the Cotton Bowl that year. But that's not my story. My story is that thing opens up and there's nothing but green grass, stripes, and two guys coming straight at me with a full head of steam. Franco Harris was not the tailback. He was the fullback in an I formation. The tailback was Lydell Mitchell. Both of those guys had, clearly careers in the National Football League. Franco, a Hall of Fame. Anyway, he's the fullback. So it's me, Franco with Lydell behind him with 53 1/3 yards and about 40 yards to the goal line. So I thought, what the hell? And so I go up to take Franco on, and the last thing I remember is when I went head-to-head with Franco Harris, the next thing I remember is I'm on the bench. I'm on the bench over there. They've got the smelling salts out on me, and that's the last I remember of that football game until we got back to Fort Worth, Texas. I told Franco that, and he said, I vaguely remember that. He said, but we were running over so many of you guys, I'm not sure I remember exactly which one you were.
Coach Matt, can you imagine, and I'm sure you were a big heavy hitter also as a safety for the Horned Frogs back in the day, but doing that so many times where you just decleat someone and run them over that Franco Harris couldn't even remember running you over because he's probably done that so many times in his career. I'm willing to bet, though, you could probably count yours on one hand.
Yeah, well, look, let me just tell you something, Chad. I probably knew the outcome when I started screaming down there to try to hit him because nobody else was around, okay? And so I knew, I just did like Braveheart and went right straight into him as hard as I could. He and I laughed about it a lot. In fact, that team that they had at Penn State, they were 11-1 that year. You know who beat them that year? University of Tennessee in Knoxville.
I remember I've read about that game and listened to a podcast about that game. Wasn't around to see it, but yeah, you're right. I remember that was a big win for Tennessee over Joe Paterno. One of the all-time great storytellers, Coach Dave McGinnis, on with us right now, sharing that college story about Franco Harris. But Coach Mack, when I think about Franco Harris, I think it's synonymous with the city of Pittsburgh and that Steelers organization. And there's fewer and fewer guys like that, right? That you just it's almost collegiate, the attachment. And I say collegiate now. What does that even matter with transfer portal when you can leave whenever you want? But there's a certain connection with team, with city. You guys had that with the Bears when you were a coach there. Franco Harris and the Steelers, it means a lot, I felt like, to both sides. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely, Chad. And that's back before free agency and the salary cap. You bring up that group. I mean, Mr. Rooney, Mr. Rooney Sr., the chief, he said, and you got to remember the Steelers were not very good to begin with. They were really they were 1-13. They were a bad franchise. Joe Green, when he was drafted there out of North Texas, he didn't want to go. Franco didn't want to go either because they were so bad. But Mr. Rooney has said before, the thing, and Joe Green will tell you this too. He said, we really got good. Because I've asked him many times, when did you really feel like it was starting? Because they had some decent drafts. He said, we really got good when we drafted Franco Harris. And Mr. Rooney said that. He said, the thing I remember about Franco Harris was we lost a lot of games before he got here. And after he got here, we won a lot of games. And so, yes, and he's synonymous. The statue they have now, making the catch of the Immaculate Reception in the airport that is there, that's a big deal. Plus, he stayed there in Pittsburgh. He was an iconic figure in the community in Pittsburgh. But as I said, Joe Green being on my staff, Chad, for 8 years, those guys are very, very close on those teams. Just like that group at the Bears I was with for 10 years, they're very close because you grew up together. You knew everybody. You knew everybody's family because you grew up together and because nobody left. And then when you put a group together like that, and of course they won 4 Super Bowls. So, there's a bond there that will never be broken, but it's completely different nowadays, Chad, and you're right. Collegiately, it used to kind of be the same with identification. Now with NIL and transfer portal, it's basically free agency now in the collegiate game. But those guys will always, always be. Franco was starting the Terrible Towel, Franco's Italian Army. The whole thing is synonymous with the history and the legend, really, of what the Steelers were.
Coach Mack, Dave McGinnis with us on OutKick 360. Mack, do you put the Immaculate Reception atop your list if you're listing top plays? And where were you? What did you think the first time you saw it, if you remember?
Well, I remember. I remember watching it, on television, black and white. Yeah, I remember it. The thing and would I put it as one of the top plays? Absolutely, I would, because of this. It was the first playoff win that they had. Now they got beat the next week, but that started them. And Joe Green has said this. He said that play and that game gave us the impetus and the confidence that we could do it. So that led to, 4 Super Bowls in 5 years, 4 Super Bowl wins in 5 years. And so absolutely, I mean, it's a huge play. And the other thing was, I mean, it was a vicious hit, by Jack Tatum on Frenchie Fuqua. Vicious hit. Of course, that ball rebounded like it came off of the bumper of a Ford truck. I mean, it rebounded. But Franco Harris, think about what he had to do, the mindset, and also just the spatial awareness to follow the play. And when you see the catch, and I know everybody's seen, and they capture it great with the statue there at their airport. I mean, that is a shoe top catch. Not only a shoe top catch, but then he has to outrun people down the sideline, for a touchdown. I think it's one of the most iconic plays in NFL history.
And, Coach, what makes it maybe even more iconic is if they had instant replay, then it probably wouldn't have stood. And that you had things like that could happen back in the day, right? With the rule of if it touches the offensive player first, it can't be caught by someone else. But that's what makes it go down in lore even more. I'm sure if you're John Madden on the other sideline, if Coach Mack is coaching the Raiders in that game, you're probably raising hell after that. But it still stands as one of the greatest plays of all time.
Chad, you know what it's like? It's like forever the people in Buffalo will hate the Tennessee Titans for the Music City Miracle. I mean, that's what it's like.
Mac, Frogs, TCU in the college football playoff. What has this year been like for you? What's the mood like in Fort Worth all season long leading up to this? And what do you make about the matchup with Michigan?
Well, first of all, it's been wonderful. I mean, my phone battery has been drained this football season with frog calls. I mean, it's been absolutely great. They sent a group here to do a documentary on me in the preseason. That, I mean, I've been in close contact the whole time. Sonny Dykes, the head coach, his dad, Spike Dykes, legendary West Texas coach, both in high school, then at Texas Tech. I knew Spike very, very well. And to me, what Sonny has done since coming over from SMU, I mean, it's been absolutely fabulous. Just think about, think about what it was like for Tennessee this year. What was the mood with Tennessee this year? All of a sudden, with what Josh Heupel and that group did, it's exactly what's going on in Fort Worth right now. Except they were fortunate enough to be able to be a part of the 14 playoffs. So it's the enthusiasm and just the excitement, and really just out of their minds is over the top.
It was weird watching Gary Patterson on the sideline in that Texas TCU game with the Texas burnt orange on. And I know that he has posted things publicly about his support of TCU in this playoff run and even in the Big 12 championship game. Could you see him being a head coach again in college football at some point, Coach? Or do you think he's kind of resigned to the consultant assistant role at this point in his career?
Gary's got a lot of other things going on. I mean, Gary Patterson and I are connected too. Coach Mack's got stories with everybody. But, I was coaching in the league, when Dennis Francione left and went to Alabama from there. And they called me about that head job, when I was coaching in the league and was very close to it. I mean, Gil Brandt was the headhunter for the job. And it's a really
Where were you at the time when that opening was happening in the NFL?
I was in Arizona.
Okay.
I was in Arizona. I was defensive coordinator in Arizona. And, of course, I'm a Frog alumni and had been very successful, had success with the Bears. And, and I was at the top of their list, and they called and we had a big conference call. It was legitimate, serious. But after, when it got down to it and they offered, the money they offered was just outstanding. But, I knew that I'd already interviewed once for a head job in the league at that time with the New Orleans Saints, had not gotten it. It had been myself, Jim Haslett, John Fox, and Gary Kubiak had interviewed for the Saints job. Well, that's when Haslett got it. So I knew I was on a fast track, to be a head coach in the league. And I'd been in the league, for 14 years. I wanted to stay in the National Football League. And I told them that. I said, look, you know how much I love the school. I appreciate this, that, whoever you hire, I'm for. Then they told me, well, we've got a young guy here that's on the staff, not a coordinator, great recruiter. We think he might be. So anyway, that's when Gary got it. Gary and I have talked about that before. And so to me, it's, what he did, what Gary Patterson did, and that was the time the Southwest Conference broke up. TCU was left out of that. TCU was left out of the Southwest Conference. And so, they made a decision there at TCU, all the money people and the foundation said, wherever we go, they went to the Mountain West at the time, we're going to be the best. And Gary Patterson is the one that resurrected TCU football from the Southwest Conference, when it disbanded. So Gary Patterson has a statue there, very well deserved. Let me just say this too, and I know, Gary comes to Nashville quite a bit. He's a songwriter, singer-songwriter, country songs. And I don't think he'd mind me saying this, but when his 20-plus years at TCU made some money, Chad, and I mean some real Texas money.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not like he's hurting to do anything.
Coach Mack, as Mack likes to say, two things he's got a lot of: hair and money.
Well, we need to get, speaking of that hair and money, we need to get Gary Patterson and his money out to one of these Mack Hut Corporation dinners at some point.
No doubt.
I'd love to hear some stories from Gary Patterson.
Mack. Dave McGinnis with us, TCU, proud TCU alum, longtime NFL coach, Titans radio analyst on game days now. And in that chair this year, Mack, you've seen the NFL's top teams, including Philadelphia, Kansas City, Buffalo, Cincy. Is Philly the best team you've seen in person, just watching the game this year?
Yeah, I think on both sides of the ball, because they're healthy and they've got dudes on both sides of the ball. Now it depends on if the quarterback's healthy or not, but to me, just on both sides of the ball, as far as from top to bottom with the roster, I think athletically they're the best that I've seen.
Is Hurts he's certainly stirring the drink, but the addition of what they've done this past offseason, Mac, and the fact that their defense can flat out get after it, it seems like they've got the perfect mix going on.
They do. They have the perfect mix going on, and they've done some things to get it going, but they still need that quarterback. That quarterback's special, and he's special for this reason. He can run, but he's a strong runner. His lower body strength is really incredible, and he's developed so much more touch, so much more accuracy as a quarterback. Now he's a true double threat, with it back there. And plus, the offense that they run, he's perfectly suited to it. And as you said, the defense that they've put together is a great complementary piece to what they do offensively, because what they separate the score pretty quick on people, and then the defense can go to work.
Coach Mack has been our guest, Dave McGinnis. So it's Thursday. You've only got, 2 days left, roughly 24 hours to go study up on the new Titans roster, practically every new name on that depth chart this week.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge challenge. I've had challenges in my 31-year coaching career. We had it here a couple of years here with Fish when we had to, purge because of the salary cap and injuries, a couple of years. I mean, it's hard, especially when you've got guys now at this point in the season, Hut, that are coming in on Monday or Tuesday, and you're not only getting them ready to play special teams, which normally that would be the case if you bring someone in that late. They got to start. They got to start and play 30 and 40 snaps. I mean, it's been a pretty hard pull on everybody. I just know it from a coaching aspect of it, the strain that it puts on you. Then you lose all your significant dudes, and I'm talking about significant dudes. Guys that when you had everybody together, you had a pretty stout team. But it started, it started early with Harold Landry tearing his ACL, the last day of training camp in a non-contact practice, and then now it goes to losing your quarterback who's been fighting coming back from things, and you've got some of the really good players like Jeffrey Simmons that are playing not completely healthy. I thought last week, what they did, with what they had out there playing, they put everything they had into it against the Chargers out there at SoFi, but ended up getting out athleted, on a combat catch, 4 seconds to go. So that's the lot in life that you have right now. As an NFL coach, I can tell you this, having lived it for 31 years, there's two things you really hate deep down in your soul as a football coach, especially a head coach. You hate losing, and you hate losing your players. And both of those have direct correlation to one another.
Mac, it was great to have you on the show today. We appreciate it. And it was a story I'd never heard with you and Franco Harris in college.
Story.
So, thank you for sharing it
and
here.
Merry Christmas.
Guys, always a pleasure being on with you guys. You're the best. Merry Christmas to both of you guys. See you.
Yeah,
thanks, Coach.
Merry Christmas, Mac. Dave McGinnis, the best. There's just a handful of people I've come across, Chad, and it's a gift. You meet someone for the first time, and you spend 5 minutes with them, and they can make you feel like you have known them for 5 years. He's one of those people, and there's only a handful of those I feel like that are walking around on any given day with us.
It's a superpower. You're right. There are very few people with that superpower. And I remember the first couple times meeting him and thinking, I mean, I watch this guy on TV on Sundays, the head coach of the NFL, and he's treating me, some 20-something at the time, like I played for him or coached on his staff, just like we're best of friends, long time. It's incredible. It's a good lesson when you meet Coach Mack in how to treat people.
Yes.
And how it's easy to just treat people with respect, treat them well. He's better at it than almost anyone I've ever met. And he's a terrific storyteller, so we appreciate him coming on the show.
Well said.
To share that Franco
Yes.
Harris story.
Yes. Coming up, Chad mentioned you've seen Mack coaching on the sidelines, watching that game. Are we going to watch the games that the NFL is putting on? And there is a player that the fans voted number 1 overall that the NFL currently doesn't have in the games. That's next on OutKick 360.
Yeah, I think because things, transitioned from that regime side to that fundamentalist side. So we also had to change some of our tactics and our procedures and everything else and how we did things to cope with these guys, because they were coming up with some ingenious ways of doing things along the line as well, with some of the IEDs, some of the, the booby trapping the houses, things like that, using the cell phones to call to detonate everything. So it became, I think, as much as you say, more violent in that way, because with the regime guys too, we knew that there was the end state was trying to get Saddam, so that we needed intel as well. We needed to gather that intelligence. There was only so much that was there from previous, just historical data. Then we had to actually make it real intel and workable intel. But with the fundamentalists, if you gave them a chance to vote, and we'd say vote based off, okay, does this guy want to is he going to go along with the capture, or is he wanting to fight? And then let's see who wins. They would rather fight than do anything. There was, so many times guys would detonate suicide vests, because it's like, well, they're not going to take me, clack themselves off, thinking they're killing, other folks around them. But, they just, I don't know, they just were different folks. And it was like we had to get more violent in a way, because again, we were going after intel and doing things, and our procedures and everything on the battlefield just had to kind of adjust, just like they were doing.
That's crazy. I truly cannot imagine. And I was in college. I started college in 2010. So I was in high school when things were getting kind of real bad in the 06, 07 era. And I remember people would always talk about do we really need to be fighting these guys? Are they really that bad? And I'm like, this Zarqawi guy's literally chopping people's heads off, right? And don't think it stops there. Like, if this guy could, he'd chop all of our heads off too. Fortunately, they dropped a couple bombs on him, I believe, if I recall correctly. So now I want to get into some comparing and contrasting. What were the big differences between fighting in Iraq versus fighting in Afghanistan? Was it mostly the terrain? Was it the level of the combatant? Like, what were the big takeaways that were different from each other?
I think early on with Afghanistan was, everything was so spread out. Everything was so far in between, and we didn't have many helo assets early in the war, just because of how, basically really having to share them along with the other task force and things like that. And so there was a lot more driving, or you would get flown to an area and then you'd be there for a bit, and then, oh, you're not getting there, you're not getting back to your home base for a while. So you're trying to make do of it and literally just sometimes sitting around doing nothing. But then within Iraq, you had more cities, bigger cities, everything else that we were hitting. Granted, you had Kandahar, you had Kabul, but everything really wasn't happening in those locations. It was farther out because, where the terrorists had their training camps from, years before us ever getting there. But then within Iraq, they could hide right there in the cities. There were, so much, just open roads, everything around. And everything else, at a lot more built up areas, and it was an easier road system to get around. So it made it easier for them as well to move around. The terrain, definitely changed throughout. Iraq, you had your river valleys in a way, and you had the humidity, you had palm groves, everything else, and then you had your rocky mountain areas, dry areas. But then Afghanistan was just so severe with the mountains. I mean, that that's some treacherous terrain in itself.
Our thanks to Dr. David Chao and Coach Mac Dave McGinnis for joining us. Coming up, we've got the playoff discussion across the NFL. We will hit some headlines and also jump into our NFL overreaction, where we'll tell you who's out. It's getting very difficult now as we get with 3 games left, teams to eliminate from our playoff consideration. And we have one big thing on every NFL game for Week 16 headed your way in about 30 minutes.
I fear I made a knee-jerk reaction this week on the elimination to where Davey approached us about it, and I just thought about the worst thing I saw all weekend and just blurted out that team. I didn't look at the numbers, didn't look at the standings, anything else. So I'll explain what I mean by it, but I don't know that I'm that confident in it now.
So Tua Tagovailoa, the number 1 player most voted on by NFL fans in the vote for the NFL games, which is like flag football now, and they're doing some other things around it to make it more suitable for a television audience than the game was, which game is putting it, that's probably me being nice. In fact, I know it is. The exhibition. It was already two-hand touch.
It was a football exhibition.
Yes. But
not real football.
So I do think they'll improve it by doing what they're doing. No Christian McCaffrey or Tua on these rosters. That is surprising to me based on the way it's not like Tua had the number 1 among all players votes for one big week. I mean, every week they were trying to update this, and I just kept looking down going, Tua continues to win this?
So how? And the fan vote, it's not like the Dolphins. Armando and I talked about this. The Dolphins don't have the biggest fan base in the league, but nowhere near it. He's not the best quarterback in the league. Is this like a Twitter bot situation where someone hacked the algorithm to give him all the votes? I mean, how does this happen? Because most of the time you can understand, it's the biggest market or it's the biggest name. NBA All-Star voting, for instance. It's pretty much always LeBron James because everyone knows LeBron James, and even if he's having a down year, he's going to get the fan vote or someone of the biggest name. But Tua of the Dolphins, it's odd to me.
We also have coaching in this, the Mannings. Peyton against Eli, and Ray Lewis is the defensive coordinator for Peyton.
See, that stuff I like when it's classic players going head-to-head. But, I mean, it's funny because for years we said you got to do away with the game and let's do some sort of skills competition and let's mix and match all this. And then the moment that you start to move in that direction, I'm thinking, I don't want to see that either. I just don't know that I want to see anything to do with a Pro Bowl weekend, regardless of what they do.
What's crazy, though, is...
Like, add a regular season game.
It's kind of background noise for me on that day on February 5th or whatever, but it's also like... because football's on, I'm watching it, just like everyone else. I mean, the ratings for this are crazy compared to what that product is.
And I know that I'm different. I know the ratings are good. I know people watch. I never watch. But it doesn't offend me either. It's not something I'm not bothered to my soul because the NFL plays an all-star game, but I just don't care. I'm not going to watch it. I don't even really watch the highlights. I'm just never going to be interested in it. If you're going to do something, then to me it's just I know for safety reasons and scheduling, but I'd just rather see regular season NFL football again. Let's just add an 18th game.
Also, by the way,
let's not stop.
Tua's snub, Christian McCaffrey snub. Let me also say, they're going to play if they want to play. There will be opt-outs.
Yeah.
There are injured players. There are players that have either just been eliminated from the playoffs that may not want to do it. Vegas, I think, certainly helps. The location helps here. And then there will be a couple of players that are in the Super Bowl that won't be participating in this at all. One year, I believe the rosters went through over 100 different players by the time they actually compiled their rosters for kickoff. So if Tua wants in, he'll play.
Quick side note here. So remember the report from John Bryce about Jason Witten taking over for Trent Dilfer at Lipscomb Academy?
Yes.
I was making sure that I wasn't crazy when we saw that originally because it was out there a while back. Well, now John Bryce is updating, saying that I'm told despite multiple attempts to convince him to accept the position and in-person visits from both sides, Jason Witten is expected to remain at his current position atop a private Dallas area program.
Wow.
So
they did everything possible.
So who's next? Dan Orlovsky?
I mean,
go
I
down the
told you,
list of
I had
NFL guys.
I had been told that the first call was Tim Tebow.
Go back
for that
to him.
Job. And for those that didn't hear us last week, Lipscomb Academy, that's where Trent Dilfer was the head coach. He's now the head coach.
By the way,
UAB.
they finished 13th nationally. Lipscomb did.
What they're trying to form without saying it is IMG Academy South. Like,
in the hot city of Nashville.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Who's next? Draw a name out of a hat. They'll call him. Maybe Jeff Saturday.
Hey.
He could be
It's
available.
not working out in Indy. Why not?
NFL headlines next on OutKick 360.
What's up, guys? It's Tommy, and in case you missed my last episode, here's what you missed. Well, the Senate voted 70-25 to proceed with the $1.7 trillion omnibus spending bill. If you're wondering what's in that monstrosity that'll benefit you, well, feel free to read all 4,000 pages of it, or just safely assume not a whole freaking lot. So allow me to just give you a few of the highlights. Here's a good place to start. It prohibits CBP funding from being used to improve border security because it's not like the invasion at our southern border is something Democrats or rhinos would care to address. Oh, but you'll be comforted to know the bill allocates $410 million towards border security for other nations, namely Jordan, Lebanon, Egypt, Tunisia, and Oman. Good for them. Glad we could help out. And we're certainly not done funding Ukraine. Apparently, that is a top priority for Republicans, in name only.
Providing assistance for the Ukrainians to defeat the Russians, that's the number one priority for the United States right now, according to most Republicans. That's sort of how we see the challenges confronting the country at the moment.
Ukraine gets another $45 billion, and just for good measure, a Ukrainian Independence Park will be created in Washington, D.C., so special and giving of us, huh? Magical. But wait, there's more. Also included is $1.438 billion in spending for membership in global multilateral organizations, including the United Nations, $65 million for restoring Pacific salmon populations, $3 million for bee-friendly highways, and an additional $5 million in further spending for salmon. Damn sure would be nice to be a salmon instead of a taxpayer, huh? But if you thought the radical leftist agenda smashed into this bill ended there, well, wrong. There's $575 million in spending for family planning or reproductive health in the bill targeted to areas where population growth threatens biodiversity or endangered species, whatever the hell that means. Oh, and you'll be delighted to know earmarks have also been added to fund the celebration of Democrats, such as naming a federal building after Nancy Pelosi and a trail named after Michelle Obama. But folks, according to the press, both sides are claiming victory with this joke of a bill. And when I say both sides, I mean Democrats, Mitch McConnell, and the establishment. This is such an embarrassment, and mostly for Republicans, because once again, we've given D.C. a blank check to go buck wild, and once again, we've trusted so-called Republicans not to. In case you're wondering, that was a big fat freaking mistake. At this point, we might as well just start flushing our own money down the toilet and take out the government middleman. Tune in tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern on OutKick.com. I will be joined by the one and only Kirk Cameron, who was denied story time hours in public libraries because of his faith-based book. You don't want to miss it.
Just like that, the final hour is here. Outkick 360, Thursday edition. Practically anywhere you're listening right now across the Outkick network. It's cold, chance for ice, snow. Stay safe. And Merry Christmas from all of us.
Merry Christmas from all of us here at Outkick.
That's right.
It's a special time of year.
Teams, Chad, that can clinch a playoff spot in Week 16. We already know these following teams that have clinched their spots into the NFL postseason. Philadelphia, San Francisco, Minnesota, and Dallas. Dallas, even though they lost last week, they were able to clinch a spot based on results. And that's out of the NFC. In the AFC, Buffalo and Kansas City, and then the divisions are still to be determined in the North and the South of the AFC. So we'll start with just pure on just what you can do, even including some of these teams that can clinch this coming week. The Eagles, they will clinch the NFC East.
Let's get mathematical, Hutton.
With a win or a tie against Dallas. They clinch the number 1 overall seed and home field advantage throughout the NFC playoffs with a win over the Cowboys or a tie, and then combined with a Vikings loss or tie against the Giants. That would clinch number 1 overall. The Giants, they're 8-5-1. They'll clinch a playoff berth with a win over the Vikings, combined with losses by the Washington Commanders and the Detroit Lions. That would put them in. The Bills, Chad, they clinched the AFC East with a win or a tie against the Chicago Bears, or with the Dolphins' loss to Green Bay. Bengals are going to clinch their division with a win over the Patriots or a Jets loss against Jacksonville. And Baltimore at 9-5, they're going to clinch a playoff spot, and they have the Falcons this week, and then they need to combine that with losses by the Patriots and Jets.
Tyler Huntley versus Desmond Ridder.
Yeah.
Ravens, Falcons. With the Ravens with a chance to clinch a playoff spot with a win, nothing else needing to happen?
No, they need losses as well by the Patriots and Jets. Yeah, they'll need help there. And the Chargers at 8-6, they've won 2 straight now over AFC opponents with the Miami Dolphins and Tennessee Titans. They clinch a playoff berth. The easiest way is to win over the Colts and then combine that with losses by the Raiders, Jets, and Patriots. It's going to be a while for them to clinch because they need a lot of stuff to happen here. And again, Eagles at 13-1. That's the most intriguing aspect of the weekend playoff-wise to me because of home field advantage, what can be clinched, and you're resting Hurts. Hurts isn't going to play because of the shoulder sprain. If you go ahead and lock this stuff up, you can make sure that he's ready to go for the postseason. You don't have to rush him back where something could be up for grabs in Week 18.
And listening to a pro football doc, Dr. David Chao, earlier, it really sounds like it is straight precautionary. I mean, he could play if he wanted to with an injury the way he's got it. If he gutted through in that game, that he could continue to do that. But they're just being very cautious. And I think that's the right approach right now for the Eagles. And, Hutton, you said it earlier. Who's to say they're not going to win this game with Gardner Minshew at quarterback?
They have the other areas to match up well against Dallas. And, you know, if they can force third and long situations, third and pass situations, they have the defense that can get after Dak Prescott. Right now, your wild card teams in the NFC, the Cowboys at 10-4, the Giants at 8-5-1, and the Commanders at 7-6-1. Still in contention, though. Seattle Seahawks and Detroit Lions are both 7-7. The Green Bay Packers are 6-8 following their Monday night win. Carolina Panthers remain in the mix because they can win their division, and the Saints and Falcons are also in that mix too. They're all 5-9, but the Buccaneers, by virtue of just leading the division by a game, they're 6-8. They currently hold the 4th spot. So all the teams are alive in the NFC South. Eliminated the Cardinals, Rams, and Bears out of the NFC. AFC, Chad?
By the way, crazy that every team in the NFC South mathematically is still alive.
Yeah.
But there's not one team eliminated.
AFC.
There's more teams eliminated.
Ravens, Chargers, Dolphins are your wild card teams currently. Still in contention. Patriots and Jets at 7-7. Jacksonville at 6-8. They can still win the AFC South with the Titans. And we could see the Jacksonville Jaguars in the playoffs going into Week 17.
Hosting a playoff game.
With a win and a Titans loss by virtue of the tiebreaker home-to-home or head-to-head win here for the Titans hosting Jacksonville. The Jags winning that game in easy fashion. They would have the tiebreaker currently with 2 games to play. The Raiders, Browns, Steelers, and Colts mathematically are still in contention based on whatever formula you want to come up with. Eliminated out of the AFC, the Broncos and the Texans. Those are the only 2 currently. But we've eliminated many teams. We're doing this each week.
We have. We're not letting the laws of mathematics and NFL playoff standings to stop us from eliminating whoever the hell we want to eliminate. And we've done that every week of the season. Sometimes we regret who we eliminate.
I have some regrets.
Sometimes we love it. Hutton's got at least one more regret than I have. I may have a regret based on my most recent elimination, but Hutton, you begin.
Yeah, so the Jets and Commanders for me were wiped out early on this season. Recently, though, I've gone to the well where it's been easy pickings. Rams, Browns, Falcons. Prior to that, back in Week 12, I took the Cardinals. I've also eliminated the Jacksonville Jaguars, who all of a sudden have a chance to win the division over the Titans. This week, I'm eliminating one of the teams out of the NFC South. I'm eliminating the Atlanta Falcons. Desmond Ridder, who in a 2-minute drill somehow doesn't know to get out of bounds and, a chance to push the ball down the field, decides to keep it on a quarterback. Situational awareness here. They're done. They're out. And they haven't been running the football very well. That's the other part of this. They've been able to lean on that through the first half of the season. They're not doing that now. Arthur Smith and company, it's a lot like last year. Last year at this time, the Falcons were still in contention. Worst record this year compared to last year for them, and maybe they end up with the same record. Who knows? But the Falcons this week, they're eliminated.
Hutton, I like that pick. I like it more than mine, quite frankly. But situational awareness is the phrase that we need to use. You just used it. I'm going to use it with my pick this week. And the complete lack of situational awareness that we've seen maybe not just this season but in recent seasons happened with the New England Patriots.
Oh, yes.
This past week. Ramondre Stevenson inexplicably trying to lateral the ball to keep it alive in a tie game. On the final play of the game, Jacoby Myers gets it and then does an even worse thing and chucks it way back, trying to get it to Mac Jones' quarterback. Picked off by Chandler Jones. Touchdown Raiders. Win Raiders. Loss Patriots. They're 7-7. I am eliminating them from the AFC East. I'm eliminating them for the playoffs. And Hutton, I've still got the Jets, who are also 7-7 right now, alive, and the Patriots out. So I kind of immediately regret this because I feel like Bill Belichick is going to make me pay for eliminating them after that. But I cannot watch the stupidity that we saw on Sunday in that game and not punish the Patriots in some way. I don't care if it really was just 2 guys going rogue. I don't care if they heard it from an assistant coach.
Yeah.
I don't care what happened. The fact that professionals did that in an end-of-game situation where all you had to do was get tackled or shoved out of bounds and you're going to overtime, and to attempt to do that, you're out. You're eliminated. You're gone. Off my list.
Are you surprised that's not more of a story?
I am.
Not because it happened, but because it happened to Belichick's team, right? He's been asked about it, and he's not, no one's really answering anything except for the 2 players who admitted it. Like, they just, we just did it on our own. But I don't, in this day and age, you just don't see that. You don't see the players go into business for themselves like that in the situational awareness game day situation. The spot they were in,
Pop Warner
you just,
level
you
stuff.
take a knee, or you do what they did, draw play. Don't have the arm to get it to the end zone at a Hail Mary, fine, draw play, go to overtime. And instead you lose, and in effect, I'm with you. I mean, I do feel like they've eliminated themselves based on that loss in the AFC to the Raiders.
Yeah, it's little kid-like. I mean, it's not only that. I think even little kids would just hold on to the ball and not ever think to
you wouldn't
keep
even see
it alive.
this in the Pro Bowl.
That's great example. It's Pro Bowl-like. I feel like it's like a NHL, NBA All-Star Skills Challenge type deal. Like they just completely forgot what sport they were playing and in what level. It's almost like they're playing a family Thanksgiving backyard game that broke out their mind, and they're not in the NFL being paid handsomely to play the game. to do something that stupid. Hutton, we were on air when it happened on Sunday, and I couldn't even explain it because I'm thinking there's no way that they did that on their own, that they completely broke rank, and that a running back of all people, not even a receiver who can be a little loose with the ball at times. You see this with defenders. So if it was an interception on the last play of the game, I could totally see a corner and safety and linebacker doing something stupid, flipping it back, and then eventually the other team that threw the interception picking it up and running it back. That wouldn't surprise me. But a guy that has his hands on the football as much as a running back in Stevenson and Jacoby Myers to do something that stupid, Jacoby Myers, who knows and is taught to get out of bounds at the end of game situations, to keep the ball, the clock running at times when you need to, it baffles me that this could have happened.
Chad, I'm with you, by the way. I haven't eliminated the Patriots. I easily can. For some reason, too, I haven't eliminated the Colts. I don't have them on my list yet. I don't know how that's been overlooked by me.
I think I have eliminated. Yes, I've eliminated the Colts.
Chad, I think we could also put another team there, the Tennessee Titans. No, Ryan Tannehill out, Ben Jones to injured reserve, backups galore across the offensive line. I mean, it's really, really bad for the Titans injury-wise. It was bad offensively, even healthy, not good, but questionable in the offensive line. Aaron Brewer, Nicholas Petit-Frere, Amani Hooker on defense, one of their starting safeties, he's questionable. It's Traylon Burks as well. Maybe he can get back, maybe not, but he's remained in concussion protocol. He's questionable. The other players who are out, Dylan Cole, Nate Davis, so they're starting guard, out. Christian Fulton, corner, out. Ben Jones now out. Terrence Mitchell out.
It's a preseason game.
Ryan Tannehill, Josh Thompson out. Yeah, it's really, really bad.
This is like preseason game number 1 in the second quarter with some of the guys that are playing for the Titans.
Yeah, and it's really strange. You going into halftime against Jacksonville 2 weeks ago, Chad, they allowed that drive. Henry fumbled, and then Trevor Lawrence drove down the field. They got that score on that great catch, toe tap grab, and then then they open the second half. Jacksonville has a kickoff return for a touchdown that's called back due to holding, and then Trevor Lawrence and the Jags proceed to go 12 plays, like 78 yards, touchdown. That broke them. I mean, that series, that span was what, maybe a span of about 30 minutes total because it was a long drive on that open second half. That's when we really saw the dam break, and now this is on the opposite end of the spectrum where it's pack-up time, really. And they won't admit that. The defense last week was really good despite all their injuries. But how can you not pick Jacksonville to win this division now?
Yeah, no, I'm certainly picking Jacksonville to win it. I'm not going to eliminate the Titans yet. I want to see what happens this Saturday, but I'm close to it. And it feels like it's Jacksonville's division now with the state of the Titans. And just across the league, I think this is a fascinating question. To blow it up and reset, or to not blow it up and reset.
Yeah.
And to take a team that is consistently in the playoffs. The Titans are a good organization. Good NFL franchise. They're not great. They're not winning at the highest levels, but they're certainly no laughingstock, and they're typically in the playoffs. And just a year ago, they're the number 1 overall seed in the AFC. But fast forward a year, you have all the injuries that precipitated a lot of this, but you got a quarterback that's not really going to be your future in Ryan Tannehill, past maybe one more year. You've got a running back that's still really good, but what's the real long-term future with a running back that carries the workload like Derrick Henry? You've got a left tackle in Taylor Lewan, who's not probably going to play in the NFL again, if I had to guess, but certainly not with the Titans. This is the end of one era of Titans football.
Their window, yeah.
Whether you want to admit it as an organization or not, you can go into denial and say, we're still going to be relevant, we're still going to be good, we're just going to add a few things next year and be right back on track. You can do that, and maybe you can disguise it and it works, and you get in at the end of the playoffs a year from now. But let's face reality. We're closing the book on one chapter of Titans football, and it's time to look for the next chapter. And that starts with finding out if Malik Willis is your quarterback, and this could go for any number of teams. when you get in this transition mode. Is Malik Willis the guy moving forward? I say probably not. But even if he isn't, you give him next year to be the starting quarterback, see what you've got. If it's as bad as I expect it to be, you're going to be picking top 5. So you go pick your quarterback then. You got to go draft a left tackle, more than likely in the first round this year. Point being, one playoff game or not is not going to decide the future and the fate of this Tennessee Titans organization. So if you're a Titans fan, put that out of your mind. And I think that, and I get it as a fan, you want to go to the playoffs, you want to play as long as you can because you love football and you love the sport. Just like a college team. Let's get to a bowl game. I want to see my team play one more time a month after the season. I get all that. And you should root for that ultimately. But what does it matter? In the grand scheme of things, it really doesn't matter about the whole of an organization or the entirety of a college football program. And that's where the Titans are now, Hutton. It's the closing of one chapter. And will they decide to start the next chapter or, try to read that last page over and over again so the magic doesn't escape them and they can try to hold on to the last bit of hope that they're going to be something? Because they're not going to be anything with this group the way things are going.
It's very well said. And the first thing they have to do is pair a new general manager with their head coach. That's the first line of business because then you have the path and direction and you speak that into existence with a press conference and the mindset of the organization moving forward, which you don't know. And there's a lot of decisions to be made. Quarterback and running back at the forefront. But, we could see 4 new starters on the offensive line next season, realistically.
Yeah.
Chad, right here.
And that's probably what they need.
Most of the games on Christmas Eve for Week 16.
One of my favorite times of the week.
We've got one big thing on every NFL game. That's next on OutKick 360.
Welcome into the holiday edition of the Trey Wallace podcast. Happy to be joined today by SEC Mike. You guys know who he is. Michael Bratton joins us on the show. Mike, what's up, buddy? How are you?
Hey, Trey. It's always a treat having you on my show, that SEC podcast. So, hey, it's an honor to do your show.
Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on, and it's the holiday season. We've got bowl games going on. We got the transfer portal going on, signing day stuff going on. It's chaotic. It's never a day off in college football, as you know. So let's start in the transfer portal, Michael, where we have seen. I think I saw a number that there are around 1,500 players in the transfer portal as we are having this conversation right now, and I would love to know your thoughts on how you think this has played out since the first day it opened, and then realizing we have got until January 19th, if I'm not mistaken, until this thing closes. What's your early thoughts on how this has played out?
Well, it's nothing short of amazing, to be honest with you, Trey. I keep track of all the players from the SEC that have jumped into the portal, and A&M's got over 20. Arkansas, Auburn, Florida, Alabama, they're close to those figures as well, just below A&M. But, man, it's absolutely chaotic. And I don't know if it's a good for the sport. I don't know if it's bad for the sport. But I certainly think that teams like LSU and Ole Miss, I think they've kind of laid a blueprint. If you want to turn over your roster in a single offseason, it can be done. And I bet you Billy Napier, of course, they're kind of doing it now, but I bet Billy Napier kind of wishes he would have taken that tactic as well.
Welcome into the holiday edition of the Trey Wallace podcast.
OutKick 360 rolls on.
Hutton, it feels like Friday in here.
Yeah, it does.
It's got a very specific Friday vibe. Could be a lot of bad weather's hit the western part of the country, starting to hit our part of the country now. Maybe it's that type of feeling that we're about to be, shut in for some extended period of time. Maybe because Christmas is what now, 3 days away? Is it 22nd?
It is the 22nd.
Every time now, so every Christmas time, I watch National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. And he's got that like dollhouse where he opens up little doors and it shows the date when they go to it, And every time that I think of a day around Christmas, I think of opening up that little door and seeing December 22nd and the music that they play on Christmas Vacation. But regardless, it feels like a Friday. I think our crew feels like a Friday too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like we should be done after today.
Because it's so empty in here? People hitting the road?
Well, 6th and Peabody is basically closed.
Yeah.
I think they kept the light on for us right now. That's it.
Yeah. Other than that, they're shutting down. Christmas Day is one of the only days that 6th and Peabody is completely closed. They're only fully closed like 2 or 3 days.
They don't close on Christmas Eve?
No, they're open. They're open on New Year's Day.
New Year's Day, I understand, especially with a lot of people coming in for New Year's Eve in Nashville. This may be the place to come, nurse your hangover with some moonshine after New Year's Eve being a big deal in Nashville.
They were open on Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving's a weird one to be open on.
I'm not sure about Easter. I'm trying to predict your other questions.
I love Old Smoky Yeehaw, and I love Thanksgiving, and I love that they're open on Thanksgiving, but I also think it's kind of sad if you're here on Thanksgiving.
No, well, their theory is, and I guess they're right in this because they continue to do it, that you're out after Thanksgiving. Many people are going ahead and starting their shopping or whatever, and that they're one of the only bars open.
Oh, well, and also, if you want to go, it's twofold. You kill two birds with one stone. You could get your Old Smoky Moonshine from the gift shop.
There you go.
For holiday gifts, and you can drink at a bar.
And if you're Dan Dockett, you host a show.
Yes. I'm never going to forgive Dan for that. That really opened the door. Because now it's always going to be, Dan Dockett did it. Are you guys saying you're better than Dan Dockett? No, we're not saying that. We're just saying we would not like to do a show on Black Friday.
Black Friday, yeah.
Whatever.
Here is one big thing on every NFL game for Week 16.
This segment right here will be better than anything Dan Dockett did on Black Friday.
Wow.
Anything. I didn't even see the show, but it's going to be better than anything Dan did on that day.
Most games played on Christmas Eve on Saturday, but the kicks off tonight. Jacksonville at 6-8. They can win the AFC South. They control it right now based on how they handle their final 3 games. 7-7 Jets will host the Jags. For the Jags, last Sunday over the Cowboys, their victory in overtime. The 4th win in their last 6 games to put them in this position. Now they're on the road facing the Jets defense. 3rd in yards allowed, 305 yards allowed per game. It's great. And 5th in points allowed at 18.8. The Jags defense, 11 takeaways in the last 5 games total. That is really what has set up Trevor Lawrence to take off. He's getting the football back a lot, and he's having to put up points because the Jags had 11 takeaways in 5 games. They're still giving up more than 27 points in all those games. Or at least 4 of those 5 games, except for Tennessee.
I really feel like this kind of comes down to, Hutton, how much do we trust Zach Wilson in this game for the Jets?
Yeah.
And
can he get a drive going late to win like 21-17?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a close game, and I think he's going to have a chance in the fourth quarter. But, I mean, come on. If it's fourth quarter game and it comes down to quarterback making play to win it, it's Trevor Lawrence's game to lose at that point.
I agree based on the 2. Falcons are on the road against Baltimore. Baltimore 9-5. Lamar Jackson was thought to be back for this week. He's not playing, so we'll see Huntley again. And this is a Ravens team that has lost to the Browns and Jags in the same month. They need to get back on track, but to do that, they've got to have Lamar Jackson back. He's not back this week against Atlanta. The Falcons rushed for over 200 yards against the Saints, and they still managed to only score 18 points. I have no idea what's going on there, but Desmond Ridder might be part of the issue. Plus, Kyle Pitts and others are on injured reserve. Lions and Panthers. The Detroit Lions at 7-7. They've won 3 games last year, and now we've seen them at 7-7 with a chance to punch their ticket to the playoffs. They have now won 6 of their last 7 games, Chad.
Our Lions, we talked about them all preseason. People didn't want to believe, but here they are, 1-6 to 7-7, and a chance to playoffs. I'm even surprised.
Yeah.
Even having believed in this roster from the beginning, surprised they are where they are right now.
But here's the key on the stretch. The final 3 games, all teams that have a record below 500 to finish the season for Detroit, they can get in. And it's not out of the – they could be 10-7 here and getting in.
10-7 in the playoffs. Incredible. Dan Campbell, Coach of the Year? Consideration
yes.
at that point?
Now, also keep in mind, Carolina controls their destiny to the postseason, too. Much like Jacksonville. The Panthers just a game behind first place to Tampa in the South, but they'll have a head-to-head coming up with them. And they need to win this. They're facing a Lions defense that's 31st in the league in third down defense. So there will be opportunities for Carolina to make this a ball game at home. Bills are on the road against the Chicago Bears. The Bills are 11-3. The Bears are 3-11. Josh Allen has thrown 10 touchdown passes, just 1 interception in the Buffalo Bills' last 5 games. He's starting to deal again. And he's doing it with some of the magic throws on the move where he's throwing back across his body, finding it. He held the ball for like nearly 8 seconds last week on that touchdown right before halftime.
He's also doing it in some really bad conditions. And his game elevated when the snow started falling Saturday night.
Yep, and I'm looking at this. The feels like temperature in Chicago for kickoff is -11. -11.
I'm looking at some right now just in Nashville. This is tomorrow morning. It will be 2 degrees, and the feels like temperature. This in Nashville, Tennessee in the South will be -8.
Guess what? Tomorrow it's -8. If it feels like it, it is.
Hutton's made the determination. It's -8.
Bills are going to get after Justin Fields. He's the most sacked quarterback in the NFL. He's been sacked 46 times in 13 games. No chance here for what Buffalo can do defensively as well. Saints and Browns. The Browns have scored just 2 touchdowns since Deshaun Watson has returned as the starter over the last 2 games. The Saints have held 6 of their last 7 opponents to 20 points or less. You can bypass this game on Saturday.
Yeah, this is that right there. This one thing on this NFL game is telling you that one NFL game that you should not watch this weekend is this NFL game.
Seahawks and Chiefs. Interesting matchup here because Seattle's 7-7. Right now, they're the first team out in the NFC for the playoffs. The Chiefs, meanwhile, they notched their 7th game with at least 30 points this season. They lead the league in scoring. They're averaging 29.6 points per game. Total offense, they lead the league in that category too. They're averaging 430 yards per game offensively. Defense, though, could be a problem for them in the postseason. They've allowed 27 or more points in 4 of their last 5 games. So can Seattle find enough with Kenneth Walker III and then Geno Smith getting some options as well in the run game and pass game, of course. But Kenneth Walker III hasn't been living up to that rookie of the year type performance hype week after week. Recently, I know he missed a game with an ankle or a foot. He's got to get back on track here. Seattle's not going to be playing much longer past, January 8th?
It's a team that's starting to look like the preseason expectation of the Seahawks, of what we thought they were going to be.
The Giants are 7-5-1. The Vikings are 11-3. In their last 6 games, the Vikings have allowed 31 points per game, and they're 11-3 because they can beat you in different ways, and they can – I mean, we saw what they did to Indy. They also allowed Indy to have a 33-0 lead, too. We should not – we should give them give Indy credit for that, at least Indy's defense credit for that. That's what holds me back from putting Minnesota in the same category, but they're right there because they're 11-3 and they continue to produce in tight ball games.
Well, the record's great, their offense is great, but that defense will get them burned at some point. It's going to happen.
Longest streak in the NFL for a team that's a favorite going into game day, the Vikings. They've won 13 straight games when they've been favored. Longest streak. Bengals and Patriots. Bengals are 10-4. They facing a Patriots team that should be 8-6, but they're 7-7 after that finish in Vegas. Ramondre Stevenson in that game, 172 yards in that game, a career-high rushing yard performance for him. But we'll remember that lateral more than we will the rushing yards performance. Bengals, they have the hot hand. Joe Burrow sacked 29 times in the first 8 games. He's been sacked just 8 times in their last 6 games. But now that offensive line is facing Matthew Judon and others. Defensively, they've got to create some turnovers. Otherwise, the Patriots are going home.
I feel better about my Patriots elimination pick when I realize, oh, yeah, they're playing Cincinnati this weekend. That's going to help my cause.
The Tennessee Titans have held 9 of their last 11 opponents to 20 points or less, and they're 7-7. They're 26th in scoring.
The opposite problem of the Vikings.
They are averaging 18 points per game. That's nearly a touchdown less per game than last year with all those backups playing without Derrick Henry. They're averaging nearly a touchdown less per game. They're hosting the Houston Texans at 1-12-1. The quarterbacks for Houston, they've been intercepted a league-high 16 times this season. But, Chad, I'm telling you, Houston is the better team right now based on how they've been playing over the last 2 weeks, despite their record at 1-12-1 for the AFC South leading Tennessee Titans.
It's really, really a sad state of affairs when you can make that statement for this Texans team, by far the worst in the league, and you're completely accurate. The Titans are about to lose this football game at home to the Texans, a very bad Texans team. But this Titans team doesn't have anything left at this point.
Keep in mind, these are all Saturday games. Here's your late afternoon Saturday games. Commanders, 49ers on Christmas Eve. The 49ers' best defense in the league. They allow a league-leading 15 points per game. That's outstanding for this group. They had early losses, though, to Chicago. They lost to Denver. They lost to Atlanta. And that's what's keeping them out of the number 1 overall spot and not challenging more with Philadelphia. But right now, and their method and madness to victory, they've got Brock Purdy just managing things. And he can do more than that. I mean, they trust him. But it's about San Francisco's defense. They are outstanding. And right now, they've got the defensive MVP on their side, too, with Nick Bosa.
And the good news about their team, Hutton, they don't have to trust him that much other than the game management part of it.
Yeah. And
they're not asking him to do much, but I'm with you. They have the confidence in him to ask him to do more if necessary, but it really hasn't been that necessary so far.
Last week, though, Kyle Shanahan, the 49ers took over on their own 1-yard line. Shanahan called a pass play for Purdy. To me, that's a great sign and confidence in your rookie quarterback. By the way, the Commanders, last 9 games, they're only allowing 18 points per game, and they have Chase Young returning to the lineup this week. This is a battle of 2 solid defenses. Eagles-Cowboys. It's a big game on Fox, 4:25 Eastern kickoff. Cowboys, they're averaging a ton of points throughout the last month and a half, like 37. And their last two opponents, the Jags and the Texans, converted 55% of their third downs. So two relatively poor teams. Jacksonville's been far better. And again, Houston's playing better, but two poor teams moved the chains on big third down plays against Dallas's defense. Can the Eagles do that with Gardner Minshew starting this game? Jalen Hurts ruled out. Now let's head to Christmas. We got Raiders, Steelers. They've won 4 of their last 5 following the 2-7 start. The Las Vegas Raiders have. They are the only team in the league with a 1,400-yard rusher and a 1,200-yard receiver. Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams. And it's been a very quiet, combination, right? If you would have had me guess that combo, I don't know where they'd come to mind for me. Probably middle of the 15th, 16th guess. Very quiet year.
It's also quiet because I remember going back to early in the year, watching that Raiders team. We had this discussion. You look at them on the field and think, how are they bad? When they were 0-3, how are they this bad? And that plays into everything that we're talking about, that they should not be what they are right now, win-loss record-wise, but yet they still get good production from good players. So that part doesn't describe me. It doesn't surprise me. It's the lack of win production that's surprising.
By the way, Raiders Steelers Saturday night, 6-8 against 6-8, and the main storyline here is the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception, and what will be I can't wait to see the tribute to Franco Harris with his passing this week. Packers and Dolphins on Christmas Day. The Dolphins have Hill and Waddle. They've combined for over 2,600 yards receiving and 14 touchdowns. 171 catches between the two of those. And you've got the Dolphins who are, trying to hold off a Green Bay team that's won back-to-back games for the first time since week 4. So you've got Green Bay feeling like they have a chance. I don't think we feel like they have a chance. But the Dolphins team that's trying to just at least hold serve on what could be a wild card spot coming down to that in Week 18. Broncos-Rams, we mentioned this earlier. This is a matchup that impacts better teams in the draft ahead of them. Detroit and Seattle will be paying attention to this head-to-head matchup of the battle of 4 and 10 teams and the battle for what could be the 3rd or 4th selection in the top 5 as it stands right now. And your primetime matchups in the traditional slots, you got Sunday Night Football, Bucks and Cardinals. The only big storyline here, aside from Brady and the Bucks, and can they just hold on to the division because they haven't been playing well at all. Cliff Kingsbury is coaching against Tom Brady, and nearly 2 decades after spending a year as Brady's teammate, he is now the head coach on the opposite sideline. Kingsbury said that in college he thought he worked hard, but Brady showed him what hard work really is. Take that for what that's worth.
Yeah, that's not a great...
Tom Brady shows us with all that. Everyone.
Yeah.
Chargers and Colts, Chad.
Not a great statement for
Chargers
Kingsbury.
and Colts. 7-6, 4-8-1 for Indy. The Chargers have won 3 of their last 4 games, and Justin Herbert, just 2 touchdown passes and 2 interceptions in his last 3 games. They've been winning, but they haven't been winning the traditional way of trying to win in shootouts. They've been winning tight window games, and Indianapolis is going with Nick Foles as the starter.
And it's another chance for the Chargers to stack wins against bad opposition, which they need to do to get in the playoffs.
You're right. And the Colts have turned the ball over an NFL high 27 times this year. So their turnover differential is tied with the Saints for the worst in the league. Jeff Saturday doesn't have that same vibe to him right now that he did after the first 2 games.
Next coach at Lipscomb Academy after Jason Witten turned him down.
Chad, that's one big thing on every NFL game.
Love it.
So here's the other big thing about every NFL game. The current estimates for the feels-like temperature at kickoff of these outdoor games this weekend coming up on Saturday. Right now, Bills and Bears in Chicago, feels-like temperature prediction, -11. Seahawks are in Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. Right now, -6 degrees is the predicted kickoff time temperature. Saints and Browns, -9. Titans, Texans here in Nashville, 5 degrees. At least we get a plus there.
Yeah. We're now going into the plus territory from the minus.
We are, except for one more. Raiders, Steelers, -4 in Pittsburgh. And Falcons, Ravens, 7 degrees. The coldest game I've ever been a part of was in Kansas City. And this was, 4 or 5 years ago now in December. Temperature at kickoff was 4 degrees. The feels like temperature, I have no idea. But KC they installed these heaters underneath their turf. And what it did is it caused an effect where you had a fog that came up. They didn't turn them on during warmups. Again, why? Don't know. They turned it on right at kickoff, and you can see it here. You see the effect on the freezing turf and the breath from the players. That was me sidelined at Arrowhead 4 or 5 years ago, Chad. You remember this well, and you remember
it was 2017, I would say.
Yeah, that's right. And how I was trying to pack, where I was trying to carry everything on to the charter. That was very difficult to get all of the gear on.
Well, and I'm sure also your hands are just blocks. Like you don't have a lot of dexterity in your fingers.
The only way to describe how cold it was, my phone on full charge when I went from the booth to the sideline was dead midway through the first quarter.
I had the same problem in Kansas City waiting on an Uber, leaving the AFC Championship game where my phone went dead immediately.
Yeah, it was just helpless at that point because that's how I was watching the stats.
Hutton, you would probably know better than I, but I feel like this is going to be the coldest game ever at Nissan Stadium in Nashville.
It might be. I mean,
I can't think of one that's even close to single digits.
The one that's close is the Pittsburgh Thursday night game here, which was 7 or 8 years ago now. It's been a while.
I feel like it was that cold, though.
It was a Whisenhunt era, I believe.
Yeah, I was at that game.
It was really cold.
It was really cold, but
I think that's the record.
I mean, I've been to some games that were maybe in the 20s, low 30s. I was at a snow game on a Monday Night Football game against the Chiefs one year where it was snowing in the second half, but I think never this cold.
No. 5 degrees. We've got some people
it's going to break a Nashville record.
Coming up, will it break the Titans fans' hearts when Jacksonville wins tonight on Thursday Night Football, knowing that the almighty Houston Texans are coming to town, rolling in
to rain on the parade.
1-12-1 to just send everyone packing.
Lovie Smith.
Let's preview.
Heartbreaker.
We'll
Stealer
explain why I've got confidence in Jacksonville tonight. We'll find out which way Chad's leaning on his picks as well. Thursday night preview next on OutKick 360.
What's up, guys? It's Tommy, and in case you missed my last episode, here's what you missed. Well, the Senate voted 70-25 to proceed with the $1.7 trillion omnibus spending bill. If you're wondering what's in that monstrosity that'll benefit you, well, feel free to read all 4,000 pages of it, or just safely assume not a whole freaking lot. So allow me to just give you a few of the highlights. Here's a good place to start. It prohibits CBP funding from being used to improve border security because it's not like the invasion at our southern border is something Democrats or rhinos would care to address. Oh, but you'll be comforted to know the bill allocates $410 million towards border security for other nations, namely Jordan, Lebanon, Egypt, Tunisia, and Oman. Good for them. Glad we could help out. And we're certainly not done funding Ukraine. Apparently, that is a top priority for Republicans, in name only.
Providing assistance for the Ukrainians to defeat the Russians, that's the #1 priority for the United States right now, according to most Republicans. That's sort of how we see the challenges confronting the country at the moment.
Ukraine gets another $45 billion, and just for good measure, a Ukrainian Independence Park will be created in Washington, D.C., so special and giving of us, huh? Magical. But wait, there's more. Also included is $1.438 billion in spending for membership in global multilateral organizations, including the United Nations, $65 million for restoring Pacific salmon populations, $3 million for bee-friendly highways, and an additional $5 million in further spending for salmon. Damn sure would be nice to be a salmon instead of a taxpayer, huh? But if you thought the radical leftist agenda smashed into this bill ended there, well, wrong. There's $575 million in spending for family planning or reproductive health in the bill targeted to areas where population growth threatens biodiversity or endangered species. whatever the hell that means. Oh, and you'll be delighted to know earmarks have also been added to fund the celebration of Democrats, such as naming a federal building after Nancy Pelosi and a trail named after Michelle Obama. But folks, according to the press, both sides are claiming victory with this joke of a bill. And when I say both sides, I mean Democrats, Mitch McConnell, and the establishment. This is such an embarrassment, and mostly for Republicans, because once again, we've given D.C. a blank check to go buck wild, and once again, we've trusted so-called Republicans not to. In case you're wondering, that was a big fat freaking mistake. At this point, we might as well just start flushing our own money down the toilet and take out the government middleman. Tune in tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern on OutKick.com. I will be joined by the one and only Kirk Cameron, who was denied storytime hours in public libraries because of his faith-based book. You don't want to miss it.
Sixth and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Glad you're with us for OutKick 360. Previewing Thursday Night Football tonight. Jacksonville on the road against New York. The Jets and Jags. It's an important game. As of right now, both teams are on the outside looking in of the AFC playoffs. It's a massive win for one of them, and the other is likely not making it based on other results that hard to predict with 3 weeks left. But the Jets have the tougher path.
The Jets need it more.
They're not going to catch Buffalo. We know that.
Yeah.
And they have to win their way in through some tiebreakers in the AFC. This will be a huge one. Meanwhile, Jacksonville, with a win, they can lead the AFC South if the Titans fall to Houston. They'll have the same record, but it'll be a tiebreaker because Jacksonville won the head-to-head. But it's not all lost if Jacksonville loses this game because they still get the head-to-head with the Titans at the end of the season. And you would expect that the Titans are going to lose one of their next two based on how banged up they are. That could be 0-2, quite frankly. But they have the Texans and then the Cowboys on a quick turnaround game on Thursday night, a week from today.
And am I right in saying the Jets need this more?
Oh, yeah.
For playoff possibilities?
Yeah, because I think the only way Jacksonville's getting in is by winning the division. But that's attainable. And I think you and I just said we think that's going to happen. Meanwhile, the Jets, they've got to they're at 7-7. I think they've got to be around 9.
So
9 wins.
I've been burned by this in the past, but I'm buying Jacksonville right now. I'm a believer in the way they're playing. They're a 2.5-point underdog. I think it's the wrong line. I think it should be a 3-point favorite in this game against the Jets, the way they're playing right now. Give me Jacksonville money line as the slight underdog in this game.
Outkick.com/bet is where you can go. Outkick.com/bet. I would also agree there. I do think the Jets are being overlooked defensively because they're great. But Trevor Lawrence has just found this rhythm within the offense now over his last 6 games. Last 6 games, they've won 4 of them, and he has completed 70% of his passes, 14 touchdowns to only 1 interception. He's spreading the ball around in a great way, stepping up and making some big throws at crucial times. It doesn't have to be the fourth quarter. It could be a big drive right before halftime or a drive to lead a team to a score to begin the third. We're seeing that now with Doug Peterson's group, Chad, that it seems like they're coming together at the right time to where even if they don't make the postseason, they are entering an offseason where and I think they've drafted well, especially defensively. They've got some young pieces on their offense. They have invested in receiver. They've invested in offensive linemen around Trevor Lawrence that, they're a piece or two away there. This is a team that will have the momentum of the offseason going into next year where the predictions will likely lean towards them to be the division winner.
No, it's all trending in Jacksonville's direction. And everyone thought that was eventually going to happen with all the high draft picks, but it's been sped up by the Titans' injuries, everything that's gone on with that team this year, seemingly having the division right in their hands. No way they could lose it. And then falling apart the way they have. It's Jacksonville's division. I think they continue on their march, and they go up to Jersey tonight, and they win, and they get it done against the Jets.
Looking at the forecast tonight, it's going to rain. It is raining in New York and Jersey. And around kickoff, it's going to be pouring. So there's a 96% chance of precipitation, 48 degrees at kickoff this evening. So that will play into the Jets' favor, which is also playing into the line in Vegas. Money line. Let's go with it.
There would be not a lot of reasons that I'd want to go attend that game tonight. In that way, when you told me that forecast, and I'm thinking, now granted, if you're a Jets fan, it's not often you have any chance of the playoffs this time of year, so that may compel you to go. But I'm not looking at that forecast in this game and thinking, I'm definitely going to be there tonight.
Chad, you got your Christmas shopping done?
I'm done.
I know you were doing that today.
Yeah.
Oh, with the kids, right?
Yep. Took Evie out to buy something for her mom. I hope Evie's not listening right now, but she pointed out some things that I was like, I definitely say that your mom would probably not like that, but I like that you're being creative with what we should get her. But, let's stick to what she sent me via text of the items that she wants. And then if you want to throw in something special, we can. But I'm not going to spend $85 on something special. If it's $20, I'll spend that. So we got a couple special $20 items. But, yeah, it's, it was good. It's good to feel like I'm done now other than having someone wrap it. Because we all know I'm not wrapping anything. But that's a skill.
Give me a gift bag.
That's a skill, Hutton, I never want to learn.
By the way,
is how to wrap something.
I didn't know Evie wanted to get Angie the Sunday ticket package for YouTube for $85.
We actually got the DVD of House of the Dragon for her. So Merry Christmas. It's her favorite show.
Merry Christmas to all of our great Outkick 360 season ticket holders.
But we're back
back
tomorrow.
at it tomorrow.
Shockingly, we're back tomorrow.
On the Outkick Network.